Our Veterinary Medical Board meeting on this 31st of January. We are going to change the agenda up just slightly. We're going to go ahead and start with item number 19 on the agenda, the report from Jennifer Laredo in the interest of the public needs. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Jennifer.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Big audience we have today. So I have a couple of things on my report. The first thing I want to address is the fee increase. I apologize, I couldn't be here yesterday. What did I miss in regards to the updates on that? Last I had heard, it had been submitted to the OAL, and then there was a 5-day comment period.
Yeah, so OAL approved the packet on the 27th and filed it with Secretary of State, and it was effective immediately. So that is final. However, the board still has to do a certificate of compliance by July 20, I think I just got it, July 27, 2020. And that just means that we have to do the regular rulemaking process. We have to open it up for 45-day public comment period. The emergency fee increase is a temporary increase. We have to then go through the regular process to make it permanent, and so it's going to be reopened for 45 days.
Okay, and then I did want to, for clarification, Jessica did clarify this for me, but I wanted everybody, there was an issue with the dates. So the VMB had sent out the email to all of the consumers that the regulations were being submitted to the OAL on January 10th, and that the 5-day comment period ended January 17th, so that there was the deadline, and anything received outside of that time would not be considered. And then there was somebody had contacted the OAL who said they hadn't received it until the 17th, so some were concerned that their comments were not going to be considered because they sent them during the wrong time period.
So to clarify, there were a couple things that happened. One, we were required by law to send out a notice of intent to file emergency regs, and that's what was sent out on the 10th, and we were accepting public comment for that, and then we filed with OAL on the 17th. And so once it was filed, that's when OAL opened up their public comment. So initially, when they were receiving comments that they realized were from our public comment period, they weren't considering it because it wasn't part of their public comment period. Once they had realized that we opened it up for public comment, they did consider every comment that came in. We were getting them at the same time, so we received over 550 public comments, and we went through all of them. And we actually received more than that, but a lot of people were sending the same comments from just different email addresses, or sometimes they would like to add on what they already sent. And so we went through all of those, but overall it was over 550 it was 550 comments.
Okay, and thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to assure everybody that there was nothing nefarious going on. It was just
Right.
Not everybody quite understood that.
And it's absolutely not the only time they'll be able to comment, because again, a 45-day public comment period is coming, and it's coming faster than our other rulemaking packages, because if you look at that, obviously it takes us quite a bit of time, but because I think everybody understands, OAL, DCA, everyone involved in the process, that the public comment was so short, and really during the emergency 5-day public comment period, they're only looking for whether or not it was an emergency, or if the board had authority to do it. And when they look at the emergency, they looked at the fund condition, and they didn't have concerns related to that. All of the public comment was more so toward the policy of changing the fees. Okay. And so the reason you have a shorter time frame is because they realize these fees are in place now, and you still need to give the public adequate time to respond, which is why you have a 45-day public comment period, but you have to have we have to have a decision we have to submit it by July, because they don't want the board to keep going out with these fees without giving that opportunity to be heard. So we have a faster time frame to get this resolved.
Okay, so that 45-day comment period, anybody who is interested in participating in that'll be posted on the board's website?
Yes, it will, and we'll send out another listserv.
Okay, thank you for that. And for the record, I am still very against the fee increase. I'm sure you all know that, but I just wanted to put it out there again.
I think for the record, everybody's against the fee increase.
The next issue that I had on my report is the issue of foreign graduate RVTs. The AAVSB PAVE committee is still ongoing. There have been some teleconferences, so I don't have any updates for you, but that has not been forgotten. That is still being considered. And then with the issue that we had of the RVT school passing rates for the VTNE, I know Jessica was able to get some of the information from the AAVSB, so we are working on that as well. And we have a plan on how to get that information out there. So again, it's not being pushed aside, it's being addressed. And then as far as some updates, there was an issue in, I believe it was Tennessee, with title protection. So just so you are all aware, with unregistered assistants being called veterinary technicians, which we know is something that's been happening around the country, but there was actually some disciplinary action taken against veterinarians in the state. So that's another concern with the title protection. And there were some recommendations on to how we could protect that. And one thing that was brought up, which we've discussed on this board in the past, but the issue of name badges. So the veterinary team, so that you know who's an RVT, who's an assistant, who's a doctor. Tennessee. Tennessee? Tennessee, she said with confidence. So at some point, we may want to readdress the issue of name badges, because I remember back in 2014, the board had a pamphlet on how to protect your animals and who's your veterinary team, because the general public doesn't understand. They see somebody in scrubs and they don't really know who's who. So I know the issue of name badges had come up. As somebody who teaches sanitation and disease control and is afraid to touch door handles, I had an issue with name badges just because of cleanliness. So if that were something that we discussed, I would say that it's only when you're working with the public or in the public eye, so that when somebody does take your pet from you, you know who that is. Obviously, we all up here know what makes up the veterinary team, but the general public goes into the veterinarian's office and everybody is the vet as far as they're concerned. So that was something that was suggested as possibly a way to help ensure title protection. Comments from the board? No. Okay. I have also heard continued a lot of questions about the delays in processing applications, and a lot of questions as to how long it's going to take. So the board actually does have a section on their website that updates the RVTs of how long things, not just RVTs, I believe it was all of the licensing categories, on how long it's taking to process. So anybody who was unsure where that information it is on the board, on the main website, and it's in a little, I'm doing this like you can see what I'm seeing in my head, but there are little sections, I think they're blue buttons on the front page, so there is an update, and I know the board is working on trying to catch up with the backlog. But anybody who was unsure about the timeline, I believe I checked it this week and it said that it was about 18 to 20 weeks to process the initial RVT applications. So we are working on that. Another thing was something that just kind of came up recently. RVT schools. Now, we've seen some licensees come before us who maybe are probationary, and we've had some questions as to RVT schools. Is there help for RVT candidates with filling out their RVT applications? Are they being misguided on what they're supposed to put, if they've had any misdemeanors or felonies, checking yes, checking no? And I think at some point I'd like to maybe explore that of what RVT schools are doing to help the RVT candidates fill out this paperwork, because the paperwork can be confusing for everybody. So that's possibly something I'd like to talk about.
I would just like to add that one thing that we're looking at when it comes to filling out applications is working with the DCA Public Affairs Unit to develop some short videos that'll show them and walk them through the process and demonstrate it, because you can give them 5 pages of instructions of how to do it. One, nobody wants to read all of that, and a lot of people are visual learners, so if we're able to post videos to show them step by step, then they can follow along and go back, and then hopefully that'll help with the applications.
Okay, so like a how-to video.
Yep.
That would be very helpful.
Would you like to?
Is this a volunteer?
I'll be contacting you shortly.
And then I'm not ready to report on this, but I did see that I believe it was the AVMA had published something about RVT retention and utilization of RVTs, and I haven't had time to really go through that yet and pull out the pertinent information. So I wanted to mention that the AVMA said something about RVTs, and when I've had a chance to peruse through it, I will report on that. And then my last thing is, I don't really know that it's RVT related, but it was brought up, so I'm going to bring it up. We've had some mail votes that are being sent to us that we're getting 5 business days to respond to. And I'm not really sure what the process is on that, but it was brought up that it's short. Yeah.
How long would you guys like to respond to mail vote items?
We need at least a week.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be 10 days or something.
I mean, I definitely need a weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's,
So we'll start giving you guys 10 days. Depending on the timeline, there might be some rare ones where we have to do it faster, but we will make it 10 days from now on.
Usually
And I would say
Sundays.
thank you to all board members for your diligence in actually doing it. Thank you. That was,
Okay, and that about wraps up my report, so.
okay, questions?
I had a question. One of my RVTs was an RVT in Illinois, in Chicago. And then after the announcement came that she didn't need her California exam she filed immediately for a RVT license. She just got it last week. But at one point during the process, I forget if they asked for a copy of her transcripts or her test scores, and they said, go to AAVSB Vault program to get it. And then Vault said, we don't do RVT. Was it curriculum that they were looking for? I was somewhat embarrassed that our staff gave wrong information, told them to go to AAVSB to get something that AAVSB doesn't offer, but would that help out with processing time if AAVSB offers that? I think it might have been curriculum for the school.
Possible we could look into that. I'd first want to find out what that is, the Vault
The Vault
program.
program. It's where they store your transcripts and things like that.
For veterinarians.
For veterinarians.
Jessica, do you think that would cut down our processing time?
I'd like to research that a little further and contact AVSB before just giving any valuable information.
Okay, any other comments or questions by the board? Public comment?
AAVSB has a way to transfer the VTNE score from one state to another. I think that's probably what they were referring to.
Well, it's a service that they currently don't offer, so it must have been the curriculum. Because you need veterinary school curriculum
I mean, if
to
she
be submitted,
graduated
don't
from an
you?
AVMA-approved school, she shouldn't have to provide.
She didn't go, well,
Yeah, and I thought when you had first brought it up, I thought it was the scores that they were saying. We said to contact AVSB so we could get the scores. And then I think, if I'm remembering, I might be remembering it incorrectly. And I think that's where the confusion was.
okay. So, anyways, I guess bottom line, if AAVSB can help processing times for RVT applicants.
I'm willing to look at whatever helps processing times.
Yeah.
I had another question. Jennifer brought up the fee increase, and there was a discussion yesterday about potentially putting a premise permit sliding scale fee into the sunset bill. Is that right? Were you talking about that?
I think that, if I remember correctly, they wanted, that was something that MDC said that they were willing to look at, not necessarily putting that into the sunset bill. What we were talking about putting into the sunset bill is when we're raising the caps, then potentially whatever revenue was generated from the RVT increase, take that amount, decrease the RVT fees, and put that up on the other license fees, potentially the veterinarians and the premises. But when we were talking about the sliding scale, that was something that the board said that they would have the MDC look further into.
Okay. I was just wondering, how are we going to reduce the RVT fee at a reasonable amount of time? Is there a way to put a sunset date on the increase in the new regulation or into somehow so that it doesn't take 5 years to reduce the RVT license fee?
So it depends on what the board decides to do and what we work out as far as the increase and lowering that in statute. So the board, in statute, you could set the fees to where it's lower, and that would take effect as when the legislation takes effect. So you would set it there, and that would be in January of 2021. And as far as lowering it, I mean, right now, it's an emergency fee increase, so then we have to make it permanent through the regular rulemaking process. But again, we would have, the fastest to lower them, I think, would be through the legislation.
Okay.
And you're speaking of the sunset bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheryl?
Okay, thank you.
So we're trying to raise the statutory caps, and who determines what that new cap will be? Is that the legislature? Do we give them advice? Do we recommend
Yeah,
numbers?
so we would be involved in that and work with the legislature to what the cap should be.
Okay.
And what the minimum should be.
Okay, so will that come back to us?
Yeah, so we would
Okay.
be involved in that.
Okay,
So
I think what she's saying is the soonest that would take effect would be January
So
of
we could tell
2021.
people that they could look forward to a decrease in January of
We
2021?
will do our best.
Yeah,
but we
I wouldn't
can't
guarantee anything right now.
Not guarantee, but you're trying to do
We're
that?
considering, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Jen, just for the record, I'm in favor of sunsetting that fee increase like tomorrow. So,
Any other public comment about Jennifer's report? Any other? Okay. Okay, we'll move on. We'll move on to agenda item number 18, which was my report. So I'll try to do it chronologically. In November, as was mentioned yesterday, let's see, Jim Howard, Jessica, Jeff Pollard, and myself attended this SCVMA meeting down in Los Angeles. Well, it was actually Long Beach. It's a long drive. Anyway, and it was very enlightening. I won't say a whole lot more than what Jeff said or Dr. Pollard said, but the first half of the day was very much about the biochemistry and molecular activity, modes of action of cannabis, including dosages and what diseases they would recommend you use to treat with these products, which was quite an eye-opener because then the VMB came forward and told them, here are our guidelines. We explained the guidelines, and it became very obvious that it wasn't something they could do. And then Bonnie very eloquently, Bonnie Lutz very eloquently as a lawyer, really advised them of how she would proceed if she was representing them legally. So I felt a little bit sorry for the attendees because they were really caught. It was we digressed quite a way from the morning activities. So anyway, having said that, I think it's a very much a moving target, as we all know. And also, I don't know if it's public or not, but Dr. Klingborg came up with a flyer that was really interesting. Has anyone else seen that flyer? Yeah, that was, I thought, very enlightening as to where we are right now and where we maybe will, need to be, in the future. And so I don't know if that's something we can publicize or if we can talk to Dr. Klingborg.
did he copyright that?
I don't know what he did with it. I don't know how, I think I got it from Dr. Pollard. So anyway, it was only sent out a couple days ago, and I'm not sure if the CVMA is circulating it or not, but it was very helpful. I also mentioned yesterday the meeting that I went to down at Allen Hancock College, and there was probably 25 to 30 people, including administrators of the college, which has an RVT program. Also, there were several students, not only current students, but graduates and instructors of the program. And it was probably a three-hour meeting. I think I understand their concerns. I tried to be very clear to them that the alternate route, the changes in the alternate route are going to go through a 45-day period for comment, and I encourage them to make sure they make their comments. But currently, right now, the law does not insist upon so many hours of actual clinical experience prior to the beginning of their education. And what they laid out to me is some of the educational requirements on the alternate route are basic biology, basic chemistry, whatnot, that these people might have had prior to even entering into a hospital to work as a veterinary assistant. Also, they said that their program and several other programs in the state have really modeled their education so that there was concurrent internship or externship work in a veterinary hospital alongside the veterinarian and other RVT and staff. And it will close the door for, they thought, quite a few potential RVTs if they had to go out and get those hours and then come back. So I just bring that up because I was struck by their sincerity and their argument, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it from them, and probably it will become more clear when they bring it back up. So, and then I think probably the last thing I did want to thank Dr. Waterhouse and Jessica Sieferman, because they do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as going to meetings and attending things. And a couple days before the CVMA meeting that we attended down at Costa Mesa, they both went to Hemopad and toured that facility, that blood bank facility. And also they went to Western University and spoke to the students, and I really appreciated that and that effort. So lastly, I think January 24th, we did, Jessica and I did attend the CVMA's Board of Governors meeting down at Costa Mesa and gave a report, or Jessica gave the report. They are very, very concerned about the fee increases. They wrote a letter of concern that was, I thought, a very balanced letter. They did acknowledge that we are under some constraints as a board that we have no control over. But they also were very clear that they're very disappointed and very concerned about the fee increases for the veterinarians, but particularly for the RVTs. And so I appreciated that input from them, and we hopefully listened politely to their concerns and had a good dialogue. Unfortunately, UC Davis, the dean and the student representative weren't there. They were all coming home from a larger dean's meeting, I think. But it was very interesting to me, I just throw this out, that the Dean Nelson from Western shared a couple of statistics that kind of surprised me. One was that they estimate that there were 500 veterinary positions that went unfilled in the country this last year, and there is a 1% or less, approximately 1% or less unemployment rate in veterinarians, which really does sort of lean credence to the fact that there are more jobs than there are veterinarians, and that we've been having that discussion for a long time, so I thought that was interesting. But I will open it up to questions if that's the end of my report. Anything from the public? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Kathy Bowler to give her report from the NAI.
ICVA.
ICVA.
Thank you. And before I start, I don't have a huge report, but I wanted to shed a little light on what we were talking about, the vault and the Viva system, just so I can clarify. Because it is a system, and I cannot speak to the RVT component of it right now, so I need to check. But the Viva system, Viva is called Veterinary Information Verifying Agency, and it is an entity that the AAVSB uses to work with the boards to provide licensure background information, transfer of NAVLE scores, transfer of graduate, the degrees. The vault is what they call veterinary application for uniform licensure transfer. And again, it is an area which is secure. They are trying to gather from all states and jurisdictions information on discipline, information on license type, registration, expiration, date of discipline, the exam ID for the NAVLE and things like that, all of which when a new applicant comes before a board, the board staff needs to go out and collect. And this gives them a hopeful one-stop shopping place to do that. And I know our staff, it isn't complete, not all the states and jurisdictions are putting everything in, but that is the goal. Now, it does have transcripts. I don't know if it has curriculum per se, and all of that is there available to the staff. I think our staff if they could rely on that as a basis, but then they go back and double check with the schools and all the rest. But it is a secure transfer, but for basic licensure applications. So that's what that is. As far as the ICVA, the International Council of Veterinary Assessments, we just had our board meeting in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and I don't have a whole lot to report other than there is some generalizations. About 6,300 new students took the NAVLE last year in this last cycle. This December-November cycle that we just had was the first cycle of the NAVLE that includes all the recoding from the blueprint that was derived from the practice survey that was so extensive. So that's finally in full place, and now that's part of the NAVLE test taking. And then we're coming up to the April test taking window as well. A couple of takeaways. We had a very interesting presentation by Bridget Bain, Dr. Bridget Bain. I think she's a veterinarian. She's also a statistician for the AVMA. And it was very interesting, obviously, on sort of the new graduates, because new graduates need to complete a survey that's semi-required by the universities about what they're going to go into, and it just has demographic basis. And we're now over 80% of new graduates are women nationally. Well, and this would contain Canada as well. And it does a decent survey of practice types and things like that, and I'm willing to give that material to Jessica I don't know if it's postable, but it was just some interesting general about people going into various practice types and the average income on the veterinary. But it did bear out there is a low unemployment rate. It varies tremendously by area, and California is probably in a different situation than the rest of the country. But at any rate, it was an interesting presentation, and debt level is still extremely high. The income to debt ratio is still really high, given a veterinarian coming out with potentially $150,000 in debt, and then a starting salary. It depends on the practice type, but it could be 60 or 70,000 or 50,000 or whatever. So it is. The entry level is still kind of difficult for veterinarians, so that was one of the big takeaways. The last thing, let me see here, I want to make sure I've got everything. I think the last thing is that we're trying to, I'm on this think tank, which is an ad hoc committee for the AAVSB, and I'm sort of a non-voting member from the ICVA because I'm not a board member of the AAVSB. There's so many initials. Anyway, whatever. But one of the things we're really looking at is barriers to licensure for incoming veterinarians, and one of the big and unique things, and I think I've talked about it before, but it's a survey. It's probably going to go out to all the state boards. Veterinarians alone, at the time they take the NAVLE, veterinary students, which is possibly up to 8 months before they graduate, must designate a jurisdiction that they're going to practice in. And some jurisdictions that do the processing themselves of the applications require the veterinary student to actually pay the licensing fees and everything at that time. This could be, like I say, 8 months before they even graduate. Well, it's unusual. I guess it's pretty infrequent among all other professionals to have to do this. And of course, in today's, people don't know where they're going to practice. So in California, we pay, I think the charge is $50 to the student, but it's an added pressure to the student to make that decision when they're applying to take the NAVLE, which they're already freaked out about. And so one of the things the AAVSB is trying to do is work with the boards to try and have them reduce or remove that requirement. so that students don't have to do this, and once they do graduate, take and pass the NAVLE, and then decide on a jurisdiction, then they go in and do the application process, which is essentially what happens in California. But there are about 20 states where that doesn't happen.
So they have to pay their licensing fee
In some states,
before they even pass their
NAVLE.
test. We don't do that here in California.
No. And our applications are, and so are 33 other states. So there are about 34 states that don't do that. The other states, and I'm not sure how it was grandfathered in or why, and maybe they just wanted to get a fix on their practitioners, and I can't even tell you the states that is. But yes, sometimes they have to say they're going to practice in state X, and that requirement may be a filing fee, or it may be the full application for their fee. And I assume there's some refund if they end up not doing it.
That was my next
I
question.
mean, it's
If there's
just,
a
it's kind of a crazy
If there's a
system.
refund, I don't see what the added pressure is for them.
Well, just to make the decision and to go through all that, and it's an added cost to them at a time when they're students as well. And some states, our state is high, but there are other states that are very high as well. So I'm just bringing that up because it's an ongoing effort by the AAVSB and this little group to try and remove at least that kind of unnecessary barrier. And that is my report, I think. Our next meeting is in June. And that's it.
Okay, any questions from the board for Kathy? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to agenda item 21, and I'll turn this over to Jessica to go through A through H.
Actually, I apologize, but I request that we actually reopen agenda item 2138 for the regulations that we just approved yesterday.
Okay.
Since we have our DAG liaison here, she did take a look at what the board is proposing as far as striking.
What agenda item again?
It's item 10D.
10D.
Thank you. Striking, including but not limited to. As you recall, that was language that was previously approved by the board, and we heard concerns yesterday. And after a discussion, the board decided to strike it. So we have brought it to our DAG liaison, Karen Denver, to her attention to take a look at. And I think that there are some concerns from the Attorney General's side. So I'd like to invite Karen up to share what the concerns are, because I think it's important that the board hears if there are concerns. Can you bring the language up?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity just to, do you want to wait till you get the language up?
Yeah.
or-
Justin, I'm going to send you an email right now with the language highlighted. Oh. Okay, so can you pull out the prior language? Yeah.
140C.
That's DC's website. There we go.
So go to the homepage. Go to out and on About Us. So About Us. Yep. And then go down to meetings. Nope, scroll down. Board meetings. And then agenda items for January. And then 10D. And then if you can scroll down
Yeah,
to, it's the first page of the language at the bottom. And see, right
There it
there.
is, yeah.
So, members, as you recall, under C, the board had taken out, but is not limited to,
It's in line 2 of C.
line 2 of C.
It didn't take long for us to get into trouble.
I wanted to raise this on the front end this time, because last time I think I came in and kind of caused some problems after the fact. But One concern about removing that not limited to language for purposes of substantially related is that it will tie the board's hands as far as you will only be able to discipline for things that are either crimes, violations of the act, or professional misconduct. And I understand that I believe I understand the reason why you are thinking of eliminating that language is kind of in the spirit of the revised 480 and to make sure that that discretion is used in what is charged. But for purposes of public protection, our concern is that then leaves you in a situation where you might have someone that you believe should be disciplined and you don't have the authority to do so. And specifically, when we were looking at these, with the new 480, there's no longer a dishonest act basis to deny an application. So if you were to get information that an applicant, for example, had been fired from a job for embezzling, like within the last 2 years, but there was no conviction for whatever reason, you wouldn't be able to do anything. And I'm not saying that you would necessarily want to do anything, but you wouldn't even have the option. And again, I do understand that you're trying to pare it down for purposes of making sure that it's not too wide of a net. But I believe between the board staff and then the board members being a secondary check, that I don't think that would be a problem. So I just wanted to at least raise that as a concern because we've had similar issues come up in regards to other boards where it's limited with good intent, but then you end up stuck, and possibly. And maybe you won't, but it's possible, so.
Well, to counter that, what the thinking was, we thought that what we consider unprofessional conduct as it relates to the practice of veterinary medicine is already defined elsewhere in our regulations, and that we just didn't want it to be, there's other things that may not be relatable to the practice of veterinary medicine that we don't feel would be fair to hold accountable as a limiter to licensure, because we think that anything that we wouldn't want, and we feel that there wouldn't be anything that we could have thought of that wouldn't have already been included in what's in our regulations already.
Except she just brought up an example that isn't in our regulations.
Just a simple dishonest act, because I know in the Practice Act, there's deception related to getting a license, deception related to, I think, the practice of medicine, but there's not just a straight dishonest act. And that's really the only one that we could come up with. Again, there could be some other scenario, but because 480 will no longer have that as a separate basis for denial, you wouldn't be able to do anything if you do limit to this. And
So
for
a
our-
dishonest act is not included. So
Correct. Just currently.
So then what is a dishonest act defined as?
Well, currently under 480, if you do any act involving dishonesty, fraud, or deceit with the intent to substantially benefit yourself or another or substantially injure another. So that has kind of been a catch-all because all the boards could use 480, but that will no longer be a basis. So if it's not within your Vet Practice Act and you're limiting to that act and crimes, which, as we know, are also being limited, it might just take away your ability to do something in that kind of scenario. I understand what you're saying, that an argument could be made that honesty is a quality that is, required in as a profession. From our purposes, when we go to a hearing, when we have to establish unprofessional conduct, we have to call an expert to establish, the standard of care, and especially if it's something that's unrelated to veterinary medicine, if they have embezzled from a completely different type of employment. And I know, for example, there's one now that it's not this, but it's a very complicated embezzlement that took a lot of effort. And you would want to at least be able to consider, I think, whether or not you could do anything with that kind of scenario.
I'm still having a hard time. You say if a person has committed a dishonest act, that can be used to deny a license.
It can right now, but it won't be any longer.
So if you committed adultery, then I can deny your license because that's a dishonest act. And we want to make sure we capture that.
Well, So right now, you could, I suppose, you could charge someone with adultery as an act involving dishonesty.
And so that,
I
so I
don't
can
think
use
anyone would.
that, so I
Let's
can
not
use that
consider-
as a justification to deny a license.
Right, but you won't be able to use it for any dishonest act after July.
Okay.
That's the concern, that, and even an egregious dishonest act, taking away the concerns, of adultery being,
But there's a lot of things that are already there. I can't think of a dishonest act that it's not already covered.
Well, she just gave us an
She just
example
told us.
that will not be covered after July.
She said a dishonest act. That
No,
was her
and
No,
example.
no, the embezzlement. The embezzlement was the example.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? And I see what you're saying, but isn't there anything about moral, not that you want to make this too broad, but that embezzlement example that you gave shows us, no matter if it is unrelated to the veterinary profession or not, shows an ethical lapse. But there's nothing that covers
no,
bad behavior.
we're limited to what's in the statute, so.
Okay, thank
To
you.
480, and then what's in your Vet Practice Act, unless you all have, not limited to those.
Right. Okay.
Well, I guess what seems concerning to me is I guess what I'm not understanding is if we have I'll just call it the Green Book, that we need to follow. And we are aren't we currently already limited to what's in the Green Book?
No.
So we can just create any other things so this can just create ability for us to think of any other thing.
Well, if you look above in section B, it has the criteria you look at to determine if something is substantially related.
Right?
So for example, you look at the nature and gravity of the offense, embezzlement as opposed to adultery. So if you're looking at whether or not it's substantially related to the practice of veterinary medicine. So there still is a criteria you have to look at.
Okay.
You can't just come up with anything.
Okay. And so why is having the language that we decided to not limited to the following stopping that?
So if you remove the not limited to, then it will only be for a crime, professional misconduct, or violating the act. I'm sorry, a conviction of fiscal dishonesty. So by removing the not limited to, you are making it much narrower.
But then we also have our other state and federal laws governing the practice of veterinary medicine.
But there's nothing in there that would cover embezzlement, for example.
Isn't it
I would say that
on-
as
Well,
long
but
as
you have
the
to have a
embezzlement.
conviction if someone,
Right, so there's a difference between a criminal conviction for embezzlement, which is a due process, versus a claim of embezzlement at a business that is not a veterinary practice, because you arguably could discipline someone for embezzlement, correct, if it occurred in the practice of veterinary medicine. So if this embezzlement occurred, at a Staples,
Right.
and then they were seeking licensure, or you later found out about embezzlement because someone who worked at Staples reported it to the board, you would not be able to include or, consider that information to either deny the application or discipline the licensee.
Even if you had an admission of the person that they embezzled.
right.
You couldn't do anything.
And I actually know of two personal episodes that the embezzlement was admitted and the charges were not pressed because of all sorts of
Various
things, yeah.
reasons.
So you can, have an admission of guilt and that's, pretty, and not be able to get a conviction or not pursue a conviction. Okay, sorry, I'll stop. Mark?
Oh, okay, I have an example, and if this example, it can be proven to me, then I'll be convinced that we have to keep that language in. In my time at the board, we did see a case that involved somebody selling products without a VCPR. They bought a lot of flea products, and they were selling it to an online company, and they made a lot of money, but they really weren't following the rules. So that was that a fiscally, was that a financial fraud or a fiscal embezzlement or something like that?
I think you'd be able to get them under the violation of any chapter of the Vet Practice Act.
Okay.
You wouldn't have to define it that way, because I don't know the act as well as you guys do, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something in there that would probably cover that.
Okay, so then I'm not convinced that we need that, is not limited to. I think it violates the spirit of the intention of this whole section here if we say we've got to make sure that we have every opportunity we can to limit a licensure, because if we cross out those three words, there's so many things that we can use to limit this licensure.
Okay,
And I
any
just
other?
can't think of,
Okay.
in all my 6 years in the board, the crimes that are committed, we have covered in our Practice Act.
Okay, Cheryl?
I think we should listen to our attorneys and do what they recommend.
I just
Hear,
think.
hear, I
don't-
agree.
I think for myself.
Any other comments? Okay.
I just think that when it's hard to explain, when it's hard to understand and it's hard to explain laws that we're putting into effect, it's going to be more difficult in the future to argue them. And I guess I just go back to Mark's. I'm just confused that everything that we have is, I feel, that we can follow, I feel is, there's an entire book on it that we need to, that we can follow. So, and I hear that you're saying the embezzlement, and I guess I just don't, it's just concerning to me, so that's why, like, we had this discussion yesterday, but I feel like it opens up a can of, like, Pandora's box of not limited to, and then where do we go from there?
So we have, Kathy?
I still think we're covered by the umbrella of of 2138, and I guess I feel confident that the staff is going to apply this very judiciously in terms of any kind of denial on licensure. Anyway, I don't like the idea of closing the door if there could be a possibility. I guess I have good confidence that our staff is operating under the intent of 2138 pretty extensively when they review applications and things like that. That's where I'm kind of coming from here. But I could be wrong, I mean.
So a couple things, while I really appreciate the confidence. We might not be here in 5 years, 10 years, staff turns over. And so I don't think you should make any decisions based on status quo today, because we're not guaranteed how long that'll last. And I think when you're looking at setting long-term statutes, you want to get it right, regardless of who you have at the helm. So you can picture some staff who just go off the rails, and I've seen it both ways, where they are way abusing the openness, and then I've seen it where it's limited and it really shouldn't be limited. So I just ask that you don't limit it to the current staff now, but I really appreciate it, the confidence now. But the other thing too is, depending on what you guys decide today, if you guys do think that you should open this back up and really look at crossing it out based on the concerns, I would just ask that we have another teleconference on this, because I think that our public comment who raised the concerns are not here today.
Yeah,
And I
we
think
can't.
that since we changed it based on their concern, if now that they're not here, we're going to change it back, I'm concerned about that. And so depending on how you guys go, I think they definitely would need to be here if you are seriously considering reverting back to that.
Kathy?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Well, I was just going to ask, I appreciate that, Jessica, thank you. I guess I was assuming maybe there were limitations on a rogue operation just denying applications without, sort of really valid reasons or renewals or whatever. And I thought there might be some oversight to that where you just couldn't do that.
Well, and also at hearing, the person can argue about the substantial relationship. They can make the argument that it's not related. And again, it is the board's backdrop. And so while I understand what you're saying, again, our concern is that if you have someone who's very problematic, but you just can't do anything, you're stuck. And maybe you'd rather go that route as opposed to the other, but it's just something to consider.
So I'd like to make a comment. I believe this was language that was in prior to us making these adjustments, and that I believe it was in there for a reason. I think our mandate is, above all else, consumer protection. So I would rather err on the side of it being open, as the wording gives us, and relying on a court of law to close it, rather than being closed and not even being able to pursue something that is perhaps egregious or concerning as far as its effect on consumer protection. So that's why I voted no yesterday, actually, and I feel very much the same way today. I think that but I do agree with Jessica now that it's, now that we're flip-flopping, but I do think that from the standpoint of consumer protection, I would like to have the ability to pursue something that maybe doesn't fall directly under the other categories.
I mean, I go back to think about the cases that we have looked at. They either involve malpractice or negligence.
Okay, so you
or-
need to be
or-
careful, though, because you had mentioned 6 years, and this is not a 6-year window. This is a window that's much larger than your experience or mine, honestly.
I don't see our profession changing that dramatically. I mean, everything that we've dealt with is covered in our practice act. I can't think of things that we're going to cast in this net.
Even in your 6 years, we have changed the Practice Act to cover things that we couldn't deal with, and that, as you know, takes time. So, other comments? Okay, we really appreciate you coming here and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. I'm going to have to ask for some direction, because I do agree with Jessica. We can't, if we're going to change back, we're going to have to do it in a public forum with the constituents that are concerned.
So there's a couple options. If you do want to, if those who are concerned with it, but we can't think of scenarios that happen, an option would be to leave it how the board adopted it, and if a scenario comes up and it shows us, okay, this is justification to change it, we can change the law. This is not the one time that we change laws all the time, so we could change it. But if you decide that you do want to change it back, then I definitely say you need a teleconference to invite them back into the room to be part of that conversation. But there's some disagreements here, so you might want to have a motion and take a vote and see where the board is. I don't know, how that would, because once you take a vote, then it's.
Yeah, I don't think you need a vote, but I think you could
like
have a conversation from each
Yeah, but
member.
I think we already had a vote.
Okay.
So I think what we need now is just to get sort of a feel for how
Okay.
people are leaning, if they want to revisit this or not. So does that make sense? Okay. Jennifer, do you want to
comments.
revisit? What?
No comments.
Okay.
No opinion.
Mark?
Leave it as is.
My vote, I would vote the same as I did yesterday.
Okay. I would vote the same as I did yesterday, which happened to be no, but.
No, yeah, me too, which is a no.
I think we should revert to the original language.
Yeah, which is
Did-
the
so-
yesterday.
Is that what you voted yesterday?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Thank you.
And my vote yesterday was the edit version.
That would be the
which,
yes
was, yeah,
yesterday.
So
Okay.
that stayed the same.
Confusing. Do you have the vote from yesterday? So we can
So
know
if
what
I
Cheryl was
understand
saying?
it correctly, there are 3 individuals who would like to revisit this and change it, to revert it back, and 2 who would like to keep the stricken language, right? You would like to keep the stricken language, and Dr. Nunez would like to keep the stricken language, and then the other, you would like to go back.
Revert.
Revert. You would like to revert. Did you want to revert or keep the
So
change?
you voted yesterday?
Can I
Okay,
just
so then it's
tell
the-
everyone what the vote was? Because I think we've got a difference between wanting a further discussion or just maintaining what you guys voted on yesterday. And yesterday, everyone voted in favor of revising the language to strike but is not limited to, except for
Yeah, I was going to say.
Ms. Bowler, Dr. Waterhouse, and Dr. Noland. Everyone else wanted the change, those three did not.
So it looks like it would be the same vote.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Well, it depends on those two. They really haven't said.
No, I want to keep my vote as I did
Okay.
yesterday.
Right.
And Jennifer?
I would abstain because I wasn't here to hash it out.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So then we'd keep it as is.
Yeah, it looks to me like we probably need to keep it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet. I think now we can go ahead and press on
Okay.
with the reports.
So now we're on to 21A, the joint sunset review oversight. There's not that much to, thank you, Karen. There's not much to report. At this time, we've provided an update that we've provided the sunset report. We had turned that in on the 27th. That was actually our licensing manager's first day. And I took him to the Capitol to meet with our committee staff to go over all of the potential issues. It's the first of many that we're going to have with the staff to work through our sunset issues. We'll continue to work with them. We said we will probably have our hearing either late February, early March. And the attendees would be the president and vice president. So Dr. Noland and Kathy Bowler will testify with me. We'll be up there and to address any issues that the legislature has asked us to address. And then we'll have some time to provide written responses to all of the issues raised.
Is there any flexibility in the dates, or they'll just tell us when and we have to be
They
there?
just tell us when and we have to be there.
And what are the chances it's going to be the last week in February?
When I was looking at prior ones, it's really right now, a 50-50. It looks like either the last week in February or first week in March, but I can find that out. As soon as I know, I'll let you guys know.
I'm not available the last week in February.
Okay.
I'm speaking at a meeting.
And I can let them know ahead of time. Maybe they'll give us some flexibility there. I'll try.
I just assumed it wouldn't happen that fast.
And are you going to take advantage of the
So-
mock sunset?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, mock.
That'll be
And
good.
actually, we'd like you to be there asking questions.
I'll be one of the public members asking questions.
And just to clarify, that's not going to be the only time that we'll have to testify. So depending on other bills that go through, if we have some changes and we want to talk about the changes during the regular the legislative session, we'll still be able to do that.
The first time is the big.
The first time is the most important one, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions? No? Public? No? Okay. 21B is administration. So I introduced Justin Sotelo yesterday. As you all know, and for those who weren't here yesterday, he is our new lead administrative policy analyst, so he is the new Amanda. And he comes with years of experience at Architects Board. He has been doing administrative things, licensing, and even management. He was management for a few years at Architects Board. And then he took a break from state service and came back and joined us. So he already knows all the rulemaking. He knows licensing issues. He has all of the experience, and I'm so grateful that he's here. We had our receptionist retire and on December 31st. She has been with us for several years, and we're happy that we wish her nothing but the best for her retirement. We have received several applications for the position for the receptionist. We're still going through the hiring process. We tried to offer the position a couple times, and we found out after going through the entire process that they're not eligible or not reachable, so we had to work on that. So we're still working to fill that vacancy. But just so you know, once we heard about her retirement, those two staff that we had from OPES and CIC, we had asked that we extend that to help cover for the receptionist, and they agreed to do that, so we still have coverage for the receptionist. And then the next item is related to our board's budget. So I provided a copy of the most recent fund condition, and this is pursuant to the governor's budget and our most recent expenditure projections. And so I invited the budget team to come up and give an overview of the two documents, and then you guys can ask any questions that you have related to the fund and expenditure reports. So I'll welcome you guys up.
Good afternoon, President Noland and members of the board. My name is Bikram Dhaliwal, and this is my manager, Karen Munoz, and we're from the DCA Budget Office. And as Jessica already kind of mentioned, we're just here today to present on the status of the budget and give a general budget update. And I believe you guys should all already have the fund condition and expenditure projections in front of you.
It's being projected as well.
It's up on the screen as well. And so I'll kind of just quickly outline them, and then you guys are more than welcome to ask any questions afterwards. So the board's fund is basically a savings account, and it has four major components, which are outlined on the left side of the fund condition, those being the beginning balance, the revenues and transfers, expenditures, and fund balance. The beginning balance is kind of self-explanatory. It's basically how much money the fund starts with. And then the revenues and transfers is how much money is coming in from different fee types like rent renewal, delinquent, application and license fees, and et cetera. And expenditures are basically the budget appropriation as well as direct charges to the fund. And those are either, depending on which year we're talking about, those are either close to actual amounts or projected expenditures. And I'll get into that further or later. And then the fund balance is how much is left over after you take revenues and subtract by expenditures. And then that rolls over, the ending balance in the fund balance rolls over to the beginning balance for the next year. And so going year by year, 2018, 2019 shows the numbers that we currently have, which are not finalized yet, but our accounting and fiscal staff are working to finalize those numbers. And so this is the most up-to-date information we have, and we believe that they're almost fully accurate, and yeah, they're close to actual expenditures and revenue for 2018, 2019. And then moving forward in 1920, it's the board's projected revenue, and in the expenditure section, it's the full budget authority. And as you guys might know, on the 27th, there was an emergency fee increase, but this fund condition doesn't have that for, it's not implemented in the 1920 but current year. So that's kind of something to take into consideration, because even though further down you see that the months in reserve for 1920 is 2.5, you can kind of anticipate that that might actually be a little higher, because those increased revenues are already taken effect from the 27th all the way to the end of this fiscal year. And then let's see, for 2020-21 is when the fee increase is, that's when we thought it was going to take place, but as I already mentioned, it took place already. And so that's kind of the governor's budget that we came up with. And the revenue section is from the workload revenue drill that we did working with board staff. And it's pretty much static from 21, 22 onward, and that's just kind of how we do it. And then expenditures include a 3% increase from year by year for 2021 and 21-22. And that's kind of just to capture like any anticipated future expenditures, because as you guys know, cost of business goes up every year. So that 3% is built into the formula to capture any of those anticipated costs. And then, Yeah, that's about it for the fund condition.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So just for example, on current year 2019, 2020,
Right.
our beginning balance is 2,090,000. And we took in revenue of 5.3 and had a total expenditure of 5.9. So we spent about $600,000 more than we took in. So that means our ending balance is about $600,000 less. So that goes from 2 million to 1.4 million, correct? Just so I understand.
Yeah, if you take
Yeah.
the 2,090,000 that you begin with,
Yeah.
add the total revenues, which is almost 5.4
Yeah.
million projected, because, I mean, we're still
And then
going
the
through
months
19,
in
20.
reserve is our monthly budget,
It's
which
the
is.
fund balance that you have at the bottom, which is 1481, divided by the expenditures that are anticipated for the next year. That's the months
I
in
thought
reserve.
months in reserve is what our monthly budget is.
So let me clarify, the
Times two.
months in reserve that we're showing just tells you how many months that the board would have to sustain operations
So with
without
this,
revenue
with this
continually coming in.
$1.4 million, we would be able to keep the lights on for 2.5 months.
correct.
Okay. And then what is the total reserves? Because that's like $2 million more than, what is that? What's that $2 million?
Oh, so are you referring to the 7,470,000? So that takes into account the 2,090,000 plus the 5,389,000. So if you add those up, that's total
Oh, our
resources.
months in reserve plus, okay,
Your beginning balance, correct.
got it, okay.
But that year also still states that you still expended more in that year than what was brought in
Got it.
revenue.
Thank you.
Jennifer and then Kathy.
I have a question. So you had mentioned that there's the cost of business increase every year. Do we get that increase in our budget as well?
So the cost, what he's referring to, every year we are tasked to, the employee comp rates go up, retirement rates go up. We've been hit the last several years and years ongoing with general salary increases. So those are what we are projecting ongoing as a 3%, because we do know that we are going to be hitting with the labor contracts. We will be receiving additional salary increases and employee comp and retirement. Those are what he's referring to when he says that, like, the
Right,
cost.
so those are the expenditures, but do we get more? We get a budget every year,
So yes,
correct?
that
Every
does
fiscal year?
increase your appropriation, the money that you are authorized to expend in that year, but that's just accounting for what's actually going to be projected to come out as well.
I just want to clarify again. So by 21, budget year 21, 22, and with the fee that just went into place fully in effect, we're still at 2.9 months in reserve only, right?
Correct, that does show 2.9 as your reserve month, but with your fee increase, if I were to expand and look out, I did kind of do a quick thing for Jessica earlier this morning. It would sustain your board through at least 25, 26, and that is based on if you only bring in the revenue that is currently projected in 21, 22, and that remains the same for 5 years, and your expenditures go up 3% every year. So that doesn't account for any licensure increase or any population increase or renewal increases. So we know that that will probably be the case. Your revenue has increased, your licensing population has increased, you get more applications. We just don't take that in effect going in out years at this time, but we can identify some expenditure costs because we do know of the employee comp and the GSIs coming through.
So the 2.9 is a little low.
It is low, but it does drop
Lower.
minimally each year.
Because it's interesting, I mean, we were 4.2 months in reserve before the increases. Now, I know we're having increases in expenses and increases in DOI costs and AG costs and all the rest. And with the fee increase, we go down to 2.9 in this, the way this, you read this.
Right, and that was also brought to my attention this morning, and so let me clarify that. So when we provided the fund condition statements back in October last board meeting, it did show 4.4. Then with the governor's proposed budget, that includes the proposed budget change proposal, which is 6 positions and the cash to go with it, so the appropriation for that, as well as additional, we have GSIs that took place this year. We have employee comp rates that also increased your appropriation and additional.
What are GSIs?
General salary increases, excuse me. Yeah, and so we have salary increases, we have employee comp, we have the BCP, which is a big increase to the budget. And so when we put those into there, which were not identified in the October fund condition, that's what dropped it a little bit.
I
But
see.
we were also preparing you in October that if we were to ask for additional resources, that 4.4 would allow you to do so.
Okay.
Okay, Cheryl?
So I just wanted to confirm, so this 2.9 for year 21, 22, that's with the new fee increases?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. If I understand you correct, thank you for coming, by the way. We appreciate your being here. These are projected expenditures as well as income moving forward, looks in most of these. And if you look down in your expenditures, you know, we have a 15% increase in the Department of Consumer Affairs program expenditures from the year 2018, 2019 to 2019, 2020, and then it's about another 15% going into the next year, and then another 10% going into the next year. Are you following where I'm, yeah. I'm assuming those projections are based on the increase in the number of employees. Is that right?
Correct.
And the increase in the GSIs and that sort of thing. And is it also projecting the increases in the AG office funding and the amount of work that we require from them, and also the DOI and the amount of work we in the past have used them with?
Correct. Yes, that actually does include an Attorney General increase as well. So that was also proposed in the governor's budget. So that will be an ongoing, the board received an
But are you assuming we're going to use them to the same extent we have in the past? I mean,
So-
to extrapolate, to predict, were you using past usage
Right.
to
So
extrapolate?
this projection also for out years also includes the board expecting to spend to full appropriation. So we could also say that the board usually saves about $200,000 a year, so then that would drop. But when we do projections out
Yeah,
here,
you go worst case scenario.
we always say
Yeah.
that this is your appropriation, you're going to expend to your appropriation, because that's the reason why you were granted this appropriation. But if there are some savings, that would only help your fund.
So, yeah, I think the point I'm getting at is we have significantly changed, I think, some of our, what would you call them? Our policies and procedures to try to streamline and save in expenses with several of these agencies. But it's impossible for you, when you're predicting ahead, to look at that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
And I do
okay.
know that Jessica had mentioned in the past that that is something that they are working on to maybe not utilize AG as much. I know that the board has been hit with AG costs for the last couple of years pretty high. So if that does,
Change, it will make the picture look
it would only
better.
help the fund
Yeah.
as well. You won't
Okay.
be expending, and so that 2.9 won't be dropping. It may just stay within 3 to 4 months.
Right, and
We
just
just
to,
don't know how to project for that.
absolutely, I just want to clarify, though, for myself and perhaps other board members, that there is a definite possibility that we will expend less than we are projected to spend.
Right.
And then I also wanted to clarify, as it's a little fuzzy in my mind, the fee increase was not added to the 2019-20, but what you're indicating is it's probably going to hit that budget year, because we didn't assume it would happen as quickly as it did. Is that correct?
Right, and so for the time that we had to create the
Sure.
governor's budget and provide these numbers
Yeah.
for that, we didn't have the emergency
Fee increase.
fee increase regulation in yet. So now that it is, we did project that it would take effect no later than July 1, so it could show up in the governor's budget at that time, but we weren't projecting it for 1920 because of the uncertainty of when it would happen. So this would also only help the fund.
Yeah, but there's no way of actually predicting how much it will help the 2019-2020 budget at this point.
I mean, we can go in and do some
Really rough,
calculations to see
yeah.
roughly how many more licensees need to renew this year and do the math on that and see what the difference
It'd
would
be
for
helpful to
one.
have that information for us.
We can get that and send it out to you guys.
Okay, thank you. Any other, yes, Jennifer?
I have a question, and I don't know that I can even get an answer to this or if it's which area it's directed at, but we know that the AG fee increases, the way it was described to us is those fees in comparison to fees in the private sector borderline abusive. And we are trying to, I'm sorry, they are. And we are trying to utilize the AG's office not as much. What are our options in that? I mean, I don't really, it really seemed that we didn't have any options.
So when it comes to the rate, the dollar amount that AG's office charges, we don't have control over that. What we have control over is how we utilize the AG's office, how many cases we send over to the AG's office, and the amount of hours. For example, if we sent over in the past boxes of information for the AG's office, and it's not well organized, and it takes a lot of time for an AG's office to go through it, that adds a lot more hours onto it if it's not clear and succinct of what we're charging. If we're not, in the past, if we weren't telling them that we're willing to settle up front, a lot of times, then hearing dates are scheduled out a year and a half in advance, which means when the AG's office does get it, they often review it multiple times to try to remember from something from back then, and that's more hours. If right now we're sending over transmittals and we're very clear on what the violations are, and we are offering settlement terms up front, we're cutting down the time and also the amount of hours the AG's office would have to spend on the case. There's a lot of things that are within our control that we're doing now that should reduce expenditures. And I know your question was specifically to AG's office, but we're also doing something similar with D of I. We have no control over D of I rates, which are right now even higher than the AG rates.
They're abusive too.
But we don't have control over that, but what we also have control over is what we send to them and the amount of hours that they're doing. So if we have our inspectors can go out and do essentially the same, if not better, work that DFI can provide, we're using our inspectors instead, and only using DFI for the true things that we cannot do in-house, which will reduce the cost significantly. So we don't have control over the rate, but we have control over what we send and how much time we spend on them.
And since I'm on a roll, procedurally, is it even an option to contract with the private sector and just skip our AG's office?
No.
No. Can't imagine.
And to Jessica's point, if you go to the next page, you will see down at the lower box, DOI investigations, it looks like we are only at 15% of our estimated expenditure budget for the year. I want to just make note of that as a kudos to you, Jennifer, so Jessica.
Well, actually, that kudos should go to our enforcement team and inspections as well.
Okay, well, yes.
Thanks.
Kudos to all of you. Any other questions, Mark?
Yeah, yesterday our DCI director was excited about changes to the CalFisc, Fiscal Chaparrero. And she seemed to be excited about it because she said, we'll be able to more easily access our revenues and expenditures. But it seems like we can already access our revenues and expenditures. Can you tell me why she was excited about that, or why we should be excited about those changes?
So right now, there's no real friendly reports that are being spit out for us to share the revenue and expenditures. So the budget office has been working with what we call an activity log. So this does give us our expenditures and revenue in real time, but it's not as simple for someone else to read. And so what we do is we pivot the information and provide that to the board with So it'd be a little bit more easy for them to be able to understand it. So it's
So like-
not as a simple report that we would like to provide as in the past, the CalSTARS reports were.
So you can maybe identify areas where we're getting over budget?
Right, and
Easier?
we can do that, it just takes a little bit more time, and right now, we're working on a report, which is what the director had identified yesterday. We're working on reports right now to provide that to you guys hopefully by next fiscal year. But, we're in the testing phase right now. There are some things that have come up for us, but we are definitely working on it weekly to make those reports accessible to the boards by fiscal year, if not sooner.
Okay.
Just wanted to say we're very excited about that, and if I'm not mistaken, this was kind of a snapshot as of 12/24, I can hardly read the print, but this activity log was sort of a snapshot, but what you're hoping to provide is more of a monthly sort of a idea so that they can follow it a little more closely, is that correct?
Correct, the activity log that Beckham had pivoted back in December was, it is, it's just a whole bunch of numbers.
It's a snapshot.
Right,
Yeah. And your fiscal year is June 30th?
correct,
To
it's July
June.
1st to June 30th.
Excuse me, July.
And then of all the boards that you present to, do we ask the best questions?
We're not finished.
There is a vast range, we hear, so.
No, that was a no.
That was a no. That was a very polite no. We ask horrible questions. Okay. Any other questions?
I've
Yes.
got questions. Are we on the?
I think we're on the
budget
next
report?
page now, so now we're on the budget report, is that right?
Yeah, before we do questions, if we move on to the expenditure report, then if we can give Bikram a chance to just kind of explain the expenditure report and then ask questions.
All right, yeah, so moving forward is the expenditure projections, and as we already mentioned, it's based off the December 24th activity log, and it's just a fiscal month 5, so that means it's through November, because the fiscal year is from July to June. So these numbers are only through November, and so on the left side of it, you see the actual expenditures for historical years like 16-17, 17-18, and 18-19. And then there's the column that says Budget Act 2019, which is actually the revised version of it, which has all the current year adjustments, which include AG rate increase, equipment, retirement, employee comp, et cetera. So, and then after that, it has the current year expenditures through fiscal month 5. And down at the bottom right, it shows you what the net appropriation is and how much surplus is projected to be the outcome after the fiscal year closes. And so right now, it looks like it's at 360,715. That's the number on the bottom right, which equates to a surplus of 6.4%. So although that is some savings, it's not a whole lot, and most of those are coming from the personnel services at the top, which is mostly salaries and wages. And given that some of those vacancies might already be getting filled or are getting filled soon, and the fact that we just got a new activity log recently, just a couple days ago, that shows data through fiscal month 6. So now we kind of have some data that's all the way through December. And just by a preliminary assessment, we've already seen that the surplus actually might decrease a little bit moving forward throughout the rest of the fiscal year. So we're definitely going to keep a close eye on that and monitor upcoming expenditures throughout the rest of the fiscal year. And that about does it for the expenditure projections. So if you guys have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer any.
Oh, you
Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions, and I know there's an obvious answer, I just can't recall what it is. Under the Budget Act 2019, why are there certain things that aren't put in the Budget Act that, like subject matter experts, or, let me see here, there was another, kind of a large number.
Well, court reporters was budgeted for nothing, so.
Yeah, there's zeros, and I'm just wondering why is that supposed to be included in another area? Or, turns out we spend money on it,
Yeah, so when you look at court reporters, using court reporters as an example, that actually is coming out of your CMP external services, what's where it's budgeted at. You see the 148 budgeted. But the reason why we wanted to break it out into enforcement is to really give a more transparent information to the board members of how much enforcement is actually costing. Otherwise, it would just be lumped into that CMP services external. So it is being budgeted for in there, but it's not a separate line item under enforcement.
I'm sorry, which CNP? Is it the expert
It's
administrative?
kind of in the middle. Yeah, it's 148,000. The full line item is CNP services dash external,
External, okay, thank you.
Okay.
budgeted for 148.
And is that the same for we typically, down towards the bottom, subject matter experts, we're spending 132 we spent last fiscal year and still projected. So again, that's the same situation where those big projections come out. Okay. Does that offset by spending less in another line item the way you're doing this? Or is it just additional expenses to consider over and above the Budget Act?
No, they're also part of the budget. They're just in a different bucket. But we wanted to show what we're really spending in enforcement. So we broke it out. So that's why you're going to see a zero, but it's budgeted in a different item.
Okay. Then I had another question, if I could. The AOL hearings, or the
OAL?
office, OAL hearings, not AOL.
Or actually, it's OAH.
I mean, OH. So we typically, we're spending in fiscal year 19, and I know it varies, of course, but it was 227,000, but yet the next fiscal year, that was the spending. But the next fiscal act has only 134,000, so we're assuming already we're going to go over budget there. Does that ever increase with the Budget Act, or do they look at past spending and?
We don't normally make adjustments to the budgeted line items. So if the board overexpends in that line item on a continuous fashion, there is a possibility that we can make adjustments throughout your budget. It would be a net zero change, but it would just
Show up
visually,
differently.
I get how aesthetically you want to see that, you're budgeted this because you expend that, but it's not something that we typically do. It's because the budget is usually set now through on our fiscal system. So we don't typically do it. It is something that we are looking into possibly doing in the future, just for, purposes of someone who's looking at these numbers. It's just a little bit more aesthetic for them, or visually they can understand it better. But it is something we are looking into.
Okay.
But it would be a net zero difference, as Jessica was saying.
It just, okay.
Right, your budget is this, if whatever you expend, as long as you're within the surplus. You may overexpend in certain line items, and you will make savings in
Underspend.
others, correct?
Right. And on the underspending, I assume with the 360,000 sort of unencumbered balance that potentially you're projecting, that would be increased by any underspending we may do, hopefully with our system and our concerns about the Department of Investigations, correct? So that would just add to it. So that's anything we don't spend would add to that. Okay.
That's in this current year.
In this
That's
current
the
year cycle.
So if you guys have any savings within Attorney General's, if you don't expend what's projected, then yeah, it would increase that surplus.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer and then Mark.
So I see we're spending significantly less on printing and postage and external copy and print services. Does that have anything to do with Breeze?
It may, but I wouldn't say it's a big chunk of it, because we just went to the paperless renewals, and it's actually not paperless, it's sending out the one-page renewals, and then telling them to go to Breeze. But it's, as far as that, I wouldn't see that too much in here, as far as once we implement all of the changes we want to do in Breeze, I think that would go down.
Well, great job on that part.
Anybody else, Mark?
So, nothing personal, but it seems that lately, every time we see the budget office, it's bad news. And what we do at these board meetings is we look at these numbers and we try to ask intelligent questions, and then we leave, and we kind of assume that Jessica is going to fix the budget. And when we come back, it's not fixed. So my question is, do we need to do more now? Do we need to reach out to DCA to have them analyze this? Do we need to maybe form a subcommittee of the board? Do we need to send something to MDC? Because I want to hear these guys give us good news, but they haven't given us good news in a long time. And so do we need to take other actions than just look at these numbers and then move on?
They're looking at you, Jessica, I think.
So you guys are welcome to do what you want to do.
We want you to fix it.
But I don't think that there's anything that DCA can do more than what they're doing, because they are helping a lot by keeping track of this for us, and meeting with us when we have questions and helping us identify cost savings. So I do think that they are doing a lot to try to help us here. Writing to everyone who will listen and having committees, I think at the end of the day, you will be spending a lot of time, which equates to money as well, and you will be left in the same boat. So I don't think it would be helpful, but I also think that they did bring some good news when you look at the expenditure projections and some of the savings that we have traditionally spent a lot of money in, that we're spending significantly less in. And as far as improving the funds, I mean, that's not really something within their control at all.
So thank you for your patience. I do have a couple more questions, just so I can try to understand it. You know, we've had a couple of employees on loan from other departments, and I'm assuming that their salaries are reflected in there, or will they show up later?
Yeah, so I know there was a couple OPES workers
Yeah.
that Veterinary Medical Board already has under contract, so
Yeah.
those were even included.
Okay,
So yeah, those usually go either in like temp help, or there's even a line item IA, which is interagency with OPES.
okay.
So those.
So those
get
are already in
captured,
there,
yeah.
okay. And then, it's pretty obvious, this is a bit of a moving target. It's, you're trying to predict things, and I understand that. But, so my questions are more to try to help me understand it. But if you look down at, for instance, under the departmental services, the pro rata, I would guess the Office of Information Services, we've spent less, but you're just still projecting the full cost. Is that because that's out of our control? It's just going to get hit no matter what? Or have we really spent less money than we projected we would? That and the administrative exec, are you looking, see where I am?
So yeah, right now they're just projected to full budget.
Okay,
That's
but it's
just the-
possible that there'll be some changes in some of these, because I was under the impression some of these we have no control over. But for instance, under facilities operations, we budgeted, 20,000 less than last year, and it looks like we're going to go, pretty close to last year. How do you get close to guessing that? Is that,
For the facilities lines,
Yeah.
that's based off of a rent schedule, so we do have that, and so facilities is usually very close to what we are going to expend.
so I'm just wondering why we budgeted less than we had in the last 3 years?
The budget has been set for a while, so that line item just has not been adjusted. And so once, if we do get to the point where we're adjusting all of these line items to the actual true, then
okay.
that's where we would true up that line item.
Because if you were
we need to.
redoing a budget and you had 3 years of expenditures up near 120, you'd kind of think that would be 120, but that, I see what you mean. So it's kind of a pretty long-term budget that's set, right? And
Yeah,
that-
just like a default appropriated amount that,
Got
like
it,
Karen
got it,
mentioned
okay.
earlier, doesn't get adjusted right away, but
Which-
it could potentially at some point in the future.
Makes it even more interesting to try to predict, I'm sure.
And,
Yeah.
and to answer your Department of Pro Rata, that is budgeted at, and that's
It's
something
pretty
that's
set,
out
right?
of the board's.
Yeah, it's
hands. So
set,
that
right.
one is set, and
Yeah.
that should be expended to full budget, and that's why we project to it. If there is a savings, we
Sure.
just don't know. That's something that is assessed at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that is projected to be expended to full.
And then there's a major equipment in the 2019 budget down towards the bottom of 60,000. Was that to replace a copier, or, I mean, is there?
A copier.
Okay, there you go. It looks like it hasn't been done yet. Are we going to do it?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. The only other question I have, and this might be for Jessica, because if you look at Attorney General expenditures and hearing expenditures, you know, we don't look like we look like we're spending more than we should be, and I thought we had kind of backed off on that this year, so.
Yeah, so there's, to clarify, for the Attorney General's office, there are quite a bit of pending cases that we have that will need to go to the Attorney General's office that have been pending for some time. There's also some that are currently at the Attorney General's office that have been pending for some time. We have a couple pretty big Attorney General cases. Some of them, we have one that's, I think, going to be a 2-week hearing with multiple witnesses and multiple subject matter experts, and that's really going to hit the budget. And so I do think that it may increase for a while, where I'm saying that we're saving an AG cost is not really going to be reflected until later on when we start closing those cases.
Got it. Okay.
So.
Okay, no, that's helpful, thank you. Any other questions, or? Okay, great, thank you for your patience and all your help.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Oh, is there any public comment or questions from the public on that last, on the budget? Okay, thanks. So we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, so we are at agenda item 21C, examinations. And so I provided you some updated information on where we stand with the subject matter experts. We have an updated schedule. We did have to add another date because in November we had to cancel a workshop due to the fires in California, and they weren't able to come to our workshop. So we didn't have enough experts, and we had to cancel it for that last one. So that workshop schedule is there, and we are always recruiting for subject matter experts to attend. The next update I have is on the occupational analysis. They were able to finish the occupational analysis, and they are working on conducting the linkage study. And so they have the schedule for the linkage study on May 12th through 13th. And then they're going to compare the contents of that to the NAVLE, and they're going to come back here and provide an overview of both the occupational analysis that they completed and then what they found in the linkage study, and provide any recommendations if they have any at the July meeting. The next one is on examination statistics. So this is what we were able to gather so far on the for the RVT, the VT&E pass rates for California. This is for the alternate route schools. We are working to provide all schools in California, as Jennifer has been requesting. Just to let you guys know, after the last board meeting, we reached out to AAVSB to try to get these numbers, and right now the statistics that they show us, they can be very large documents. They could be 150 something pages. I had requested a more reader-friendly version of a report that we can use and post for all of the RVTs or potential RVTs who would like to find that information. After going back and forth, we found out that it would cost $20,000 for us to get this special report, and I politely declined. And my staff is now using they're the ones going through these really long reports to put it in a more reader-friendly format for you guys. Wow. So that's, so I want to actually thank Justin. He was the one who did a lot of this and was able to get this information to us. A couple things again, although this is just alternate route, our goal is to do all California schools. We also want to post this on our website so they can easily see it. This is also first-time test takers. We want to add second times, so retakes. And then when you go back, when you go down to our California State Board Examination, North American Veterinary License Examination, Veterinary Technician National Examination. I think the way that we display it is a little misleading, because if you, for example, if you look at California State Board Examination, that one is specific to California, but when you go down to Veterinary Technician National Examination, that makes it sound like those are all the national results, but that's actually only California individuals taking the VT&E. And so what we want to make, what we're working on is making it a little more clear on exactly what we're presenting. And then we also want to be able to display what's happening in California versus the rest of the nation, so you can easily be able to compare that, because we think that that really helps anyone who's interested in pursuing either profession to identify what the pass rates are and how well California is measuring up to the nationals. So if there's any questions, please.
Jennifer, you want to start there? We'll go.
Just have a comment. I want to thank Jessica and the staff for getting these statistics. These alternate route RVT program statistics are concerning, and this is one of the reasons it was so important to get these. So I thank you for all of your hard work in gathering this information.
Kathy?
I was just going to say, I also appreciate that and I think it would be very useful, and I know it's available, so thank you, Jessica, for getting it, to show the California pass rates compared to the national NAVLE pass rate or national VT&E, because I know we can get that from those groups, and I think it'll be useful. Thank you.
So I have a question, and one of my questions is, I think one of the misleading things that we have to deal with is the percent first time taking the test versus second time.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember taking the national boards the first time and I did pretty poorly, you know, because you take it as a junior and they don't even, no, in my day, they didn't even, worry about it. You just took it to take it. So it would be really helpful. Are all of the alternate route school test takers first time, do you know?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say in the beginning when I said right now it's just first-time test takers, but we're being able to display the retakes as well.
Well, so down when you look down at the national test, there's always been, in my mind, a big discrepancy between the November, December and the March, April.
There is.
And so it might be first-time test takers, but some of these might be juniors in vet school. Does that make sense? Or they haven't finished their schooling. Is there a way to designate whether they've graduated or not when they take it?
We can look into that
You see what I'm
and
saying?
get back.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they take it really at the very beginning of their last year, and other
Right.
times they're taking it at the very end. And that's probably going to really affect the pass rate, I would hope.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Also take a lot of staff time to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well-
well, I just think when we look at the data, we should remember that there might be some discrepancies in when these students are taking the test compared to where they are in their educational process.
I will say that without taking staff time, I know from on the NAVLE, that data can be given by criterion, which would be first-time test takers from accredited schools and things like that versus second time. And also the schedules, the two schedules, the April one and the November. And that would be something that I could make sure the ICVA board gets to. I think you have it maybe anyway, but at least for those two, I can't speak for the VT&E, but for the NAVLE for sure.
Well, that would be
Just more
we can get the
informational.
first-time test takers and the retakes. Where it would be, where I'm not sure if we'd be able to determine is where they are in their schooling. And I think that was Dr. Nolan's question.
Yeah, the
and
schooling is
I'm under the impression that, for instance, the Western students all take them in their junior year with an 80-something% pass rate. That's what he's reported in the past, the dean. But I don't even know if they allow you to take it in your junior year. I think they do, so. Looks like Nancy has something to add.
Okay, the first thing was I just wanted to remind you that our regulations require that schools maintain a pass rate no greater than 10% below the average, or they're subject to being put on probation. And since we haven't had these statistics for a long time, we're not enforcing that, and that's a problem. The other problem is the large delay in the application process is causing students to probably you're going to continue to see low pass rates on the VT&E because what typically happened before the delay in processing the application sending, for the RVTs, they cannot take the test until they've finished all of their education. They can't apply until they're ready to graduate. Then if they have to wait 5 or 6 months, and they only give the exam during these 2-month windows 3 times a year, and if you graduate and your application is delayed for 5 months, you have to wait perhaps 8 months to take the exam, which is a problem for most students, that they're going to be forgetting a lot of the information that they learned. Ideally, you take the exam shortly after graduating, when you're very enthusiastic about it. And so I would encourage you to do everything that you can to expedite getting these applications, particularly for the first-time applicants, done in a more expeditious manner.
Yeah, I just have a question, and maybe, and I think that you might know, and maybe the board members, but actually that I thank you for that comment, because it goes back to one of my questions related to the license process. Is we have attached all of the requirements to the examination. And I'm not quite sure why, because if they want to take an exam, maybe just let them take the exam and take us out of it, as long as we put the requirements on the license, that by the time they apply for a license, they have to have graduated, they have to taken and passed the exams, then they would just apply for the license and they would provide all that stuff up front, and we're removed from the equation.
Well, the AVSB requires that you are a graduate of an AVMA-approved school, or that the state says that you are qualified because you're an alternate route candidate.
Right, and so I'm wondering if we can work with AVSB, if that's something that the board would be interested in at least considering, if we can change the process to where all that analysis is happening right before license, we can work with AVSB. Is that something worth considering? If we can talk to AVSB and have them, just let them take it.
That would solve that concern that Nancy just raised.
Right.
Sounds reasonable.
And I know that that's their policy, but, I mean, they're getting paid either way, and if the applicants want to take it, why not let them take it?
Yeah, just like the veterinarians take the NAVLE.
Yeah.
Well, they ideally would like to take the test closest to when they graduate from school.
Right,
And if
exactly.
And so they can anticipate when
Right.
that's going to happen, and so
And
they
with
could
this,
apply.
and with this proposal, they'd be able to do that.
Yes.
So would you like us to direct you to discuss this with the AVSB?
I don't think you need to direct me. I just kind of wanted to take a pulse of where you guys were at, because as far as consumer protection is concerned, we would still do the evaluation. We would still make sure that all the requirements are met, but it wouldn't be until after they have done everything. But to tie all the requirements in the front end, I think delays it unnecessarily. I just don't see the benefit, other than that's AAVSB's policy, to put this, to me, it's like a barrier that I don't see a reason why.
And it affects the alternate route candidates more than it does the AVMA school graduates, because their programs are kind of scheduled around the testing windows, where the alternate route, particularly the ad hoc people, they may qualify at any time during the year. And the alternate route programs, depending on the length of the program, it may end at a certain time, and it could be months before the next exam, or it could be a few weeks, and in 6 months later, the application is finally approved. So that would be a help, definitely.
Okay. I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Mark?
What's the current national pass rate for the VT&E? Do we know?
I'm sorry, because you're asking, since it's just March 8th through April, so you're asking for,
The current national pass rate for the
These are just veterinary, this is California.
This is just California.
VT&E.
so we can display that. I don't think it's being displayed right now. That's one thing that we're going to look at.
So since Bakersfield College is more than 10% below the national average, does that mean that this board has to take some action? against their accreditation?
Well, and I think isn't it a 2-year or there's a range? So it's like not year by year. I mean, because when you only have 4 people or 5 people taking a test, you have to be really careful with statistics because you get a bad year of students, it's going to really affect you. So I think there's some sort of isn't there a range?
I understand that point, but like if you fall below the average,
But I don't think it's if you fall below it
Triggers.
in 1 year, but remind me if I'm.
So I actually don't have that memorized. But what I can say is, since we have this data now, and we have it for alternate routes, and we'll get it on all of them, we can do that comparison now. And if it is below, then we'll start taking some action and start enforcing it. But the goal first was, we needed the numbers.
The numbers first.
do you know, Nancy, is it like 10% below the national average when taken over the course of a year?
National average, it was the state average.
The state average,
And was it multiple year average?
or any given test period?
I'm sorry, if you actually can come to the microphone, just the webcast.
Well, of course, this regulation was put into effect when we weren't using the VT&E, we were just using the California exam. And it was falling more than 10% below the state average on any particular administration of an exam over a 2-year period.
Over 2 years, okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all I have for examinations. Just to clarify for the webcast, Nancy just said it's for first-time test takers.
I'm not sure we keep that data separate. Are these all of the test takers were first time? There are
Yeah.
no repeats in this data?
Right, but we're working on getting that. All right, for our licensing report, as I reported on yesterday, as far as Monil Singh, he has joined the DCA's Office of Information Services, that's our IT side. I was sad to see him go, but I think that this is a career path that really excites him more. When he was in an AGPA before we promoted him to a manager, he was really doing a lot of the breeze work, and that's really what he enjoys doing. And so for him to pursue this alternative career path, I'm really excited for him to do that. But I'm still really grateful for all the work that he's done. And he's also going to serve as our BIA, our business, business integration analyst. He's going to help with a lot of the breeze improvements that we're going to be doing, which is good because he already knows our current processes and he knows where we want to go to improve them. So he's still going to be working with us, it's just in a different capacity. But with that, I did introduce Tim Rhoda. We did promote him, we gave him a promotion. He was at the Architects Board for 14 years, and we hired him in Monil's replacement, and we were really excited to have him on our team. Tara's also had a lot of experience working with him, and she speaks very highly of him as well. So we're really excited to have him. We do still, for our licensing unit, CIC and OPES has extended their contract with us to loan their staff, and they have been helping, and we really appreciate that they're willing to extend that contract with us while we're dealing with the vacancies. When it comes to fingerprints and renewals, we realize that there's a lot of concerns with the information, and there's a lot of misunderstandings of this fingerprint requirement. There was a lot of people thinking that this was a brand-new requirement that we put on them, and it wasn't. There was an article that Vin had put out on this issue, and there were a lot of people who had applied for the renewal, and they didn't know that they needed fingerprints, and it wasn't telling them in the system. Maybe they didn't realize on the renewal that it told them, but for whatever reason, they were going to renew, and they were able to pay, and they would get a payment completion verification, but it didn't change the status of their application. It still showed pending because fingerprint results were still pending. And so we put out a document and we sent it out to all of our stakeholders and put it on our website to give them clarifications regarding fingerprints. But we're also experiencing issues where fingerprint results are not being matched to the record. And that could be due to several reasons. If the individual has changed their last name since they applied with the board and didn't update it with us, the records aren't matching. If the date of birth is wrong, or if the social security number is transposed or not on the live scan form, it's not matching to the record, and that goes into a holding tank that staff will have to go and manually clear every day. So there's a significant delay right now in clearing that unmatched report. And so because of that, there was a lot of concerns, especially in it came out during the Board of Governors meeting that we presented at. And so I let them know about the General Business and Professions Code 121 that allows individuals who have complied with all the requirements prior to renewal to continue to practice because it's through no fault of their own. After those discussions, it was apparent that we needed to get this word out to everybody, and so we sent out, and I think if you all subscribed to our emails, you all would have gotten that. We did provide that to all of our stakeholders and also on our website, that clarification, because there's a lot of people who's concerned, who've done everything that they needed to do to get renewed, and through no fault of their own, it's not renewed. And so I think, to me, it was really important to let them know that this is here for a reason. It's happened before, and actually the reason I knew this, and Justin, I don't know if you remember this, but the only reason I knew about 121, I learned it when I was an office technician at Architects Board, because there was a delay in processing applications, and I remember we had to tell them 121 exists because some things happen just outside of the licensee's control, and we would have to let them know that they can still continue to practice. It's not considered unlicensed practice. So we did get that out to them. I do just want to jump to the biggest concern that I've been hearing, and certainly was mentioned in a lot of the comments received for the fee increases, that people are calling the board and not able to get through. They are trying to leave voicemails, but our voicemail box is full. They can't get through to anybody, and our emails are not being answered. I agree with all of that. It's happening now, and we're working on fixing that. I am really confident in Tim and his ability to help us get on track. With Justin's help, I'm really confident. Actually, when Tim, he had to leave for another appointment that he had prior to us hiring him. But when he was leaving, he said he's so excited to come back on Monday to start getting into really what's going on and how we can fix what's happening. And I think that's really awesome that he's not, like, after this day and after his first day being at Sunset with Sunset Committee and hearing all the issues, for him to still say he's excited at coming back was,
We didn't scare him off.
Another common complaint from even the ones who understand the need for the fee increase, they're upset, and I think reasonably so, when they say, we're paying you even more for bad service, and really a lot of it is no service. And they're right. I completely agree with that, and it's something that we're working on right now to fix it. There's so many things that we're working to improve, and actually, right after, actually it was during the board meeting yesterday, after the director was here, her staff came up to me, her managers, and said that what else can we do? And they're helping. OIO is coming out. They were just looking at inspections, but now we're going to have them look at the entire process. So we're all hands on deck on trying to solve this issue. It is going to take time. I can tell you with those two PT2 positions, we're running into a lot of issues with that classification. It's not a well-known classification. We get a very little candidate pool. We've been through, I think, 2 repostings and a couple interview cycles where we have found candidates that we have tried to hire, and they're not reachable or eligible, and so we haven't been able to fill them. So we had to just recently repost it again. And not only that issue, but that classification is hard to retain as well, so we're looking at that. But there's a lot of stuff in the works that we're trying to fix. It's going to take time, but everybody is working to it. But I just wanted you to know that everything that's being said is true. But I also need to acknowledge that my licensing team who's there now, they are trying their hardest to get all of these processed. In the system, it says we have 1,800 pending applications, and if you think about it, I have 2 people who are processing applications. Those same people are answering the status checks when we get all of the calls. And so I can't duplicate them. There's other people on our staff who are also helping them that I think it's really great that they're willing to step up and help. And so the staff there, it's not that they don't care, they're not doing anything. They are trying their hardest, and I think that also goes to the turnover too, because both licensing and enforcement, it's overwhelming. And no matter how much progress they get, they'll never be able to maintain it, and there are a lot of people upset. And it kills morale, and it's just hard, especially the ones who really care about what they're doing. There's not enough hours in the day. And so it's really bad now, but I am getting more and more excited with our path going forward, so.
Anything we can do?
So, many members and also Nancy have come to us with scenarios because people go to them. And then we get phone calls and say, hey, so-and-so called me and they're upset because it's been pending for this long, or they want to know and they can't get through to the board. We know that that's happening. What I sometimes we will do depending on the circumstances, but what I don't want members to get in the habit of is just because they have a connection to one of you or to me or to Nancy, I don't think that it's fair to then expedite those applications because they just happen to be the one complaining. I think that there's a lot of people in the queue, and our staff is trying their best to process an order received. So if we're pushing people up because they are the squeaky wheel, I feel like that gives the rest of the community who are waiting and being patient, I think it's a disservice to them. So. But I would like you to still let me know if you see our cycle times as 18 to 20 weeks. If you have scenarios where it's over that, please let me know, because that could be that there's something else going on that we're not aware of. But if it's lower than that, I just ask you to be patient with us because we're still processing those. I think another thing to keep in mind is that we post what month that we're in as far as applications received for processing. So if we say we are 4 months back and we just received the application and someone's really upset that we haven't gotten to it yet, it's because we're processing here. So just keep in mind of where we're at.
Kathy?
No, go ahead. Well, I guess my question was, I think from a consumer protection standpoint, the fingerprinting, which we were supposed to be doing for a long time, it's good that we're doing that. But do you feel that has played a role in the lengthening of the licensing times, especially for renewals?
No, not for initial applications because they're getting fingerprinted now. And where it comes to renewals, as far as processing renewals, that part, if you have your fingerprints, it's pretty much automatic. It's the same time if you do it online, it'll be renewed that same day. But that holdup about the fingerprints, the results being unmatched, it will hold it, but we're actually running reports that'll identify all of those individuals who have paid their application but is still pending, because odds are that's what's holding it up, and we're going to be sending that out to all of those individuals to let them know. But also, that's why we sent out that notice to all of them to let them know that they can practice if they've fulfilled all requirements prior to expiration, but it's still not renewed, they can still practice.
A quick question on fingerprint, just because it was an example brought to me. If a licensee that's in New York also has had her license in California for many years, I guess maybe since 2006, early on, she did fingerprinting, possibly at the initial one in 2006 or whatever. And her renewal this time, she needed to do it again. And it could be a mismatch, it could be whatever. Does that mean her renewals through the years since 2006 have always processed okay? Because the fingerprinting wasn't a critical, people weren't reviewing, the system wasn't reviewing the fingerprints
Right.
before now. Okay, and so now, and then, I assume those kinds of individuals are getting what you call hard packages or
They
something?
get a hard card, yeah.
And that is being sent to them, and are you pretty up to date on sending those out to individuals that are requesting them?
That I don't know, but I can find out and
Okay.
get back to you.
Lastly, this whole section, and you're maybe getting to it, about the incomplete applications, which, when we talk about the raw number of applications, you have fully complete, can move forward, and incomplete that need follow-up and work. Is that one big combined pool? And as the incomplete applications is because of error on the applicant's part, right? Possibly they didn't fill everything in correctly or whatever. Is that also a big part of the slowdown?
That's one of the things that we're looking into. The 1,800 pending applications, we're just shy of it. That's what's showing in the system. But if there are people, that also includes people who have gone online and opened the application but haven't paid for the application. So that's counting in the 1,800. But I have directed my staff to focus on the people who have paid, because the whole reason they pay is to pay for them to process the applications. And so we're focusing on that. It also includes a lot of those who we have reached out to, but they haven't come back to us. A huge chunk of that is the VA CSPs. I think I think there's over 1,000 of those individuals. I would say half of them, we've already reached out and we need more information and they're not responding. But they still sit on our pending numbers. But that's why the board has approved legislation asking the legislature through a sunset bill to the authority to abandon applications after a year. So once we get that, then we can close out the applications and then give it over, and then it'll stop showing on our pending numbers. But with that said, there's also things in the system that when it was designed, it's expiring applications. And I can't remember the license type at this time, but there's an application that had expired after 3 months if it hasn't been issued. It was automatically designed to expire the application. Well, you can't do that to expire it. And so what staff was doing is they were spending more time on creating another record and transferring the money over. It was just creating a lot more work. And so we're working on fixing that and putting that expiration date out further. And so that's all in the works. But what I'm saying is that's what the system is showing, to just give you a baseline, because we didn't have that before. So I wanted to bring you out, this is what it's showing, but we still have a lot of steps until I'm confident in what's truly pending and what's not.
There was a public comment made at the beginning of the meeting yesterday that university licensing should have some sort of priority. I was unconvinced with that plea, but I'd be interested in knowing your thoughts.
I think I need to look at a few things in that license type before I can give a good opinion on that. I do think when it comes to the universities, I think they come into some scenarios where if they have to if they need another resident that needs a license and they're not able to teach a class, I think that's a concern that should be looked at. But I also want to look at not just universities, but all of our applications and see what is it that our staff has to actually review. And then if there's requirements on a license type that doesn't really require manual review, if we can automate that in the system, which means less. I just need to review the requirements to determine what system designs we can. And I don't know offhand what the requirements are of the universities. Again, I haven't memorized them all yet. But if there's a true need for us to touch them, if not, we can make it more automatic. But I don't think I have enough information to let you know yet.
And I'm sorry, you have such a big job.
Yes. Cheryl. So back to fingerprints. So I've heard from more than one person that said, oh, well, if you were licensed before 2012, then you have to get fingerprints. But I think it's just the regulation took place in 2012. So is there a year that we can say for sure if they were licensed before then, they need fingerprints? Is there a certain year that you know?
I wouldn't be confident in putting out any year right now because the regulation does say a specific time frame and it took effect in 2012. However, it also says if there's no electronic record or if the electronic fingerprints aren't in the system, they have to get fingerprinted. And so that's where I'm not confident in saying, yes, if this time you have to get licensed, if not, you don't.
Okay.
Because of that second part of it. And there was a time where DOJ wasn't tracking electronically. It was all via paper. And so if they don't have the results, likely we don't have the results and we need them to get fingerprinted again. So I don't have a clear, like, this is the time frame.
Do you know what year it was they started, the most recent one when they started using electronic fingerprints?
For DOJ, I don't.
Okay.
But I can tell you that we're working on several ways to do even more outreach to the licensees of those who are impacted. Like I said, the ones who have paid but are pending, likely they need fingerprints and we'll be contacting them first. That's my first priority. And then we have identified the individuals who need to be fingerprinted, but it's over 10,000 individuals. And if we told them all to go get fingerprinted now, our enforcement team can't handle that. So, and it's not realistic to do. And so we're doing it in phases. Those who are up for renewal, it opens 90 days prior. So when that happens, we're going to be sending out a mass email to those individuals, and who don't have emails, we'll send out the letter to let them know they have to get fingerprinted. And to let them know, just another mechanism to let them know they have to do this and to not wait until the last minute to do it. But again, we're working on getting all that out.
Okay, good. I think we're good. Any questions on licensing from the public or comments?
This is just a quickie. You have your licenses issued, but it says fiscal year 2018-19 and licensing population as of January 21, 2019. Is this a typo?
Yes.
So these are the current statistics?
Yeah.
So the one that says 17-18 should be 18-19, and the one that says 18-19 should be 19-20?
Yes, thank you.
Enforcement?
On the second page.
So Rob is unable to join us. His family is rather sick, and you should be glad that he's not here. But I will do my best to give the enforcement report. I think that a couple things, we did promote our office technician Dylan to the staff services analyst position. I'm really excited that we were able to do this, and he's already doing such a great job in enforcement and jumping in and getting these cases. He's also helping with a lot of other tasks that aren't necessarily his desk, but he's stepping in where he can in enforcement. For example, he's helping with Public Records Act requests, which we get a lot of. Another thing that I want to start reporting to you guys, because I don't think that's been recognized, how many PRAs that we get, and that takes significant staff time. So we're really excited that he has joined us, but because we promoted him, that created another vacancy in our office technician, but we hope to have them hired, that position filled very shortly. I don't know if you have any updates Patty? Okay, so, but we're hoping, we made an offer and we're hoping to have that filled here shortly. We also, for the probation monitoring vacancy, after talking with Ginger, who was in our complaints, processing a lot of the complaints, I don't know if she volunteered or more voluntold, but we really recognize her experience in the probation world. She spent several years, and I don't know the exact number, but it was several years in probation at medical board. And she saw a lot of things that worked, a lot of things that didn't work. And I could not be more confident with someone in that position. So I asked her if she could, instead of focusing on complaints, she can really take a hard look at the probation monitoring program and also all of the probationers. She's already had a whole bunch of things that she's found that I think that she wants to improve. I think the biggest overwhelming part for her at this time is just the sheer volume. We have over 100 probationers, and there's only one of Ginger, unfortunately. But I really appreciate her willingness to shift her job duties to fit our operational need. And I think that that's really important. But we are still looking at filling that vacancy in the complaints unit. We do provide updates on the Attorney General's office there. If you have any concerns, I don't want to go all of this verbatim, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board? Jennifer?
I have a question. Something I forgot to bring up in my RVT report. It was asked if we were able to provide a breakdown on enforcement of how many cases were DVM versus RVT. I don't know if that's a possibility.
I think that's something similar to what Carvada had been requesting. I think we can be able to provide how many against the license types we can definitely provide. Where it becomes difficult is when we talk about costs. That's something that is a little more difficult, but I think that, and I apologize if you requested that last time and it wasn't provided. That's, I think I must have just forgotten about that one, but I definitely will write it down, and by the next meeting, we'll
I never
be able to-
forget anything, so.
Well, I didn't think I
I'm
did
kidding,
either, but.
Yeah, I think just maybe like a percentage of, is it 50/50? Is it, I mean, just,
Yeah, and I think we can actually do that with all license types. I mean, we don't need to just do one versus the other.
Nancy?
I just wanted, Jennifer mentioned that the Tennessee was talking about sending out a letter to all of the veterinary practices, reminding them that you cannot call a veterinary assistant a technician, that it's a violation of the Practice Act. And I'm wondering if California would consider doing something similar, notifying all premise permit holders that it's illegal to refer to a veterinary assistant as a technician. I think many people are unaware that this is the problem. And and inform them that it's a potential for a citation if they continue to do that. And we have plenty of volunteers who were offering to look up the hospitals that were actually advertising this on their websites. But at least, if the Veterinary Medical Board would in some way make this very obvious, I think that would be very helpful.
Yep, I actually wrote that down when she said it, to look it up and be able to put that out there too. Yeah.
I have another question, something else that I forgot, even though I never forget things. I was talking to somebody who had gone to their salon of some sort, and they were talking about inspections, and the salon said, well, yeah, we haven't been inspected in 4 years, and when they came in, they fined us for this and that. I know we give fines as far as disciplinary, but do we have any fines when the hospital inspectors go in and there's, I mean, any of those? It was in the interest of revenue for us, and I just don't really know the procedure.
So I want to just be careful when we say generate revenue as a result of fines, because it's never the intention of a citation is for it to be a revenue generator. Use fines to incentivize compliance. but it's never meant to make money. So I just need to say that. So you can't say, oh, we're going to go issue out all these citations, so in order for us to generate money, because that's not the intent of what the citation is. But with that said, if the question is if we've ever issued a citation for inspections, the answer is no. But that's something that's changing, that I'm working very closely with Patty and her team on. We actually talked about changing their job duties to start being the ones who are issuing the citations after working with the licensee to comply. So I do see us in the future start issuing citations for those who are not listening to us or not following through.
Okay, because I know some other boards like cosmetology do that, and we would love to incentivize compliance.
If they're going to be issuing citations, would it be appropriate for them to have uniforms?
No.
But I'm glad you jumped right in on that. because that was good.
Would it now be appropriate?
No.
Still not.
I'm not going to give it up.
You should not.
I think actually another one for enforcement, we're close to 2,100 pending cases. We have 4 analysts. So that's just not manageable. Well, thank you, Ginger. We have 3 now because Ginger's no longer there. I heard that clarification from the back of the room.
Yeah.
So it's just not manageable, no matter how many hours they put in. But I am happy to say that the 6 positions was approved in the governor's budget. It's still not a for sure thing, but it's more for sure than it was before. There's still a lot of steps that we have to do to finalize it through the legislature. We have to go through the Senate and Assembly budget committees. I can tell you, though, so far, the Legislative Analyst's Office, who also reviews it, didn't have any questions about ours. I think it was pretty clear that we needed the staff. It has been clear for a very long time. I don't think that's ever been the issue. It's the issue of the funds.
So when would that likely happen, do you think?
If it's get approved July 1.
Okay.
So that's it from the enforcement report. Do you have any additional questions or move on? No? So with that, I'd like to invite Ginger to come up to the table. This is something that I think that we're going to start doing on a regular basis, is have its own probation report. I think that based on the sheer volume of probation and what we've seen so far and how the probation unit is going, the fact that this position has had, 5 people in it in the last 5 years, it's a high turnover. And I think it's because of just the sheer overwhelmingness of probation itself. What I wanted to do is start providing, there's no materials on it. No, sorry, you're all looking for it. But there will be in the future, just since she was brand new to this position, it doesn't give her a lot of time to go through all of the people on probation. But the whole intent is on a regular basis, provide you more information in what's going on with probation, because I think that that's been one of my concerns for a while. And I think some of you have echoed the same kind of concerns and how we're not following up. How is this getting missed? What are we doing? And so I asked Ginger to come to the board meetings and start presenting on specifically for probation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ginger.
And welcome, Ginger. We're excited to have you step up.
Thank you. Members of the board, Madam President, Madam Director, I'm Ginger Gerard, and I recently assumed the duties of the probation monitor on December 16th. Yesterday, I tallied, and I'm going to have to contradict Jessica again because I didn't have over 100, but
Okay, good.
we have 67 veterinarians on probation with 7 in a told status. We have 22 registered veterinary technicians on probation with 3 in a tolling status. 37 active probationers have biological fluid testing as a condition of probation. We have 44 open complaints on probationers. We have 9 probationers pending cases at the Attorney General's office.
When you say open complaints on probationers, does that mean non-compliance?
No, it could be, it's from the public.
So they've been placed on probation, and then in that time, we got other complaints while they're on probation.
Okay.
And how many is
Yes,
that?
sir. 44.
Is that 44 different individuals?
Can you turn your microphone on? Sorry.
I'm sorry, 44 different individuals have had complaints, or 44 complaints total?
44 total.
I mean,
There are clumps on particular respondents.
right.
So anywhere from 1 to maybe 8 on a particular probationer. We have 9 probationers. Did that answer your question, Doctor?
It did.
We have 9 probationers pending cases at the Attorney General's office. And actually, some complaints are on those folks.
So I'm sorry, that last part again,
We have
9,
are pending at the Attorney General's office.
so we've
We
made
transmitted.
What does that
an
mean?
order to put them on probation and they're,
No,
They're already on probation, and we transmitted to the Attorney General with a request to revoke the license.
oh, okay. Okay,
Okay,
Because-
so my current goals
because they violated terms.
are to perform a case review, send introductory letters, work the complaints on the probationers, find and follow up on any discrepancies in the biological fluid testing program, and pursue violations of probation. I would like to put forth a request to you while I'm here. Please change California Code Regulation 2043 so that we can cite for probation violations. That'd be very helpful.
so good news. They approved that yesterday. We're striking it. So
Let me just mark that off.
Is there anything else you would like?
Sunset bill?
no. So for clarification, we're talking about.
People?
So for clarification, we can't do it yet because it's not effective, but for clarification, that is the language that the board decided to strike, the regulation that says while engaging in the practice. So because we're able to strike that, once that's effective, we will have the authority to issue those citations.
When you, okay. Thank you very much, and I look forward to working for you in my new capacity. And when will that be effective?
So it's now in queue in our rulemaking.
Is there a reason why we
Sunset,
can't
so,
try to
yeah.
attach it to the sunset bill?
Yeah, because it's not a statute.
Oh, got it, it's a regular.
So I love her already.
I know.
You know, I mean, before our
everything
probation,
noted?
this was our probation report before, and it basically was just, here's the new probationers, here's the ones that completed, and here's the active cases. But you've, in that little 5-minute breeze, have given us more information than we've ever had before. And those, we wonder what those numbers are when we're looking at disciplinary cases.
Well, I can customize that report.
So what I would request of you is that at the next meeting, just to have those numbers that you just gave us in a nice, beautiful, visually appealing
A visual, okay.
chart with
A
multiple
chart.
colors and
Yeah,
and
And
remember,
definition.
your
Don't spend
your
too
report
much
is
time on
usually
that.
around this time, so our mental capacity, we like pictures more than numbers.
Yeah, I figured now was a good time.
And if you could define those things.
Define them, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Good, any other?
I wanted to add, we're also, we haven't been doing regular compliance meetings with them either. And that's one thing that we're going to start doing. Ginger will be going down to Southern California and doing some compliance meetings, and we'll be doing it here as well. We actually talked about, Rob and I both have experience doing probation. So if we can tie it to, because I frequent Southern California for work more than my kids would like. But, so if I can tie it down to either we're having a board meeting in Southern California or I'm going down for another reason, we can tie it to that trip and we can spend a day and the three of us can knock out several probation interviews to just kind of get us up to speed and make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So we have a path forward that's exciting to get this program to where it should be.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
So that brings us to hospital inspections. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Patty Rodriguez, our inspections manager.
Good afternoon. So you have before you the inspection program report. As far as staffing, we did have Ms. Jocelyn July start her new position as an inspection analyst, and she actually comes from Tara's office in the legal department, and she came very highly recommended, and you could see her background there and her experience. She has a lot of experience in administrative and management positions, various retail organizations, but as well as some animal handling background in different areas. So we're excited to have her. And we did conduct interviews for the vacant office technician position. And just when I had all the positions filled, our current office technician, Miss Emily Groves, notified me that of her decision to actually leave state service. So it was a difficult decision for her, but one that we support. And Emily's been just a vital member of our team, and we just can't thank her enough. So I want to publicly thank her right now for all of her hard work over the last 3.5 years. So this is a pretty significant loss for us in the inspection program, but we certainly wish her the very best in this new chapter in her life. But we also welcome Mr. Adam Mackey, who is our other office technician, the one we just filled. So Adam brings to the board several years of experience managing various promotional product accounts for some pretty well-known global office supply companies. And he also worked at Walt Disney, for the Walt Disney Company. It's been a little while, but he does have a lot of corporate experience. So we're excited to have him and hope that he'll stick around for a while. And staff has been, as it shows on the report, focusing on compliance document review. That's been a pretty intense focus for the last few months. So we've made some pretty significant progress there. As you could see, our document review has jumped from August 2018 to August 2019. Now, that's not to say that all of those inspection reports are completely done. It's just that they've actually finally been looked at, and those that still are not in compliance, we are moving towards pre-citation. So to answer your question, Ms. Laredo, not yet. We haven't issued citations yet, but that is what we are looking to finally really utilize that tool, because it's out there and it's, we need to utilize it. And if the situation calls for it and these facilities remain out of compliance, then we're going to utilize the tools that are at our disposal and streamlining that process in order to be a more effective program. And just, again, just achieve that compliance, because that's, at the end of the day, that's all we're looking for. We're also continuing to transition to the cloud technology for submission of these inspection reports and making the tweaks as we go along. And we anticipate using that technology for the complaint-related inspections as well down the road. So we're hoping everything to just become completely paperless. Collaborative efforts with the different veterinary medical associations continue, And we do have inspectors participating in meetings later on this year. And as those requests come in, we make every effort to either attend if they're here in Northern California or send one of our local inspectors if it's in Southern California. And we are also working with OIO to map out the inspection process and identify gaps and make process improvements, and especially when it comes to, automating the process as much as possible, and having the box, our iCloud technology, be able to communicate with Breeze. So that's the biggest hurdle, so that's what we'll be working with OIO and OIS to figure that out. So still moving in the right direction, not as quickly as I would like, but we're making progress. So if you have any questions.
Cheryl. Hi, Patty.
Hi.
Under inspections, the first
Can you
paragraph.
turn your microphone on?
It is on.
Oh, speak
So
closer.
sorry.
Thank you.
Under inspections, the first paragraph, the last sentence where it says routine inspections will resume with probation-related inspections. Does that really mean complaint-related? So we're
No,
having.
so we're working with Ginger to identify those probationers that may be coming off of probation and that have that inspection term in their terms and conditions. So to use that tool again and go out there, conduct an inspection, and if there are violations, then share that information with probation so they can take the necessary actions. But it's a tool, it's a term that's in their order, and so we want to start there once we resume inspections.
Okay.
And, sorry, just
Go
to
ahead.
jump onto that. So I want to really utilize inspections where I think there's more potential for harm to consumers. And so with probation, we're going to start with those who are coming off soon. And inspect those individuals. And I think we're going to start with those individuals who have the condition, and even if they don't have the condition, I think we should still do inspections. I think we've had some cases where they might not have the inspection condition, but they also have a work site monitor or supervisor, and the supervisor is the one supposed to be checking the medical records, and then we get a complaint later on that the medical records were awful, but the supervisor was telling us everything was fine. When we go out and do routine inspections on people on probation, that's going to be another tool that we can use to make sure that the probationers are compliant. But the important part with inspections when it comes to probationers is if they have that condition in there, they're also having to pay themselves for inspections. So we're recouping that cost. And so we're not only making sure, looking for compliance through inspections, through routine inspections, it also goes to our 20% mandate that we have to do.
Yeah.
And we're recouping the cost. So it's like three birds with one stone. And so I really want to focus on routine inspections with probation first. We're still going to open up to regular inspections, but I think with the limited resources we have now, it's just a better way to use them for consumers in general.
Okay. And the citations that might be issued as a result of probation violations, those are, or inspection violations, are those already, do we have to pass any new regs to make that happen? We already have that authority?
Yeah, we've always had authority to
Okay.
do that. We just haven't been utilizing it.
Okay. And then on the next page, the compliance rate of 33%, is that still the definition that they became compliant within 30 days?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark?
Where it says compliance document review, August of 2019, this report is from July 1st to December 31st. So does that mean that compliance documents for September, October, November, December haven't been done yet?
Of 2019?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. when I look at your last report, which was from July to September, it says August of 2018.
Correct.
So you've almost caught up.
Right. We,
So that's very impressive.
Very observant of you, Dr.
I want you
so
to know
again,
that I
it's
noticed that.
Not to say that those inspections are complete, because some of them still remain outstanding, and so we're moving towards that next step, which is pre-citation.
That's a fantastic job.
Thank you. It's a team effort. It's really the analysts that have really just buckled down and just poured into these reviews. So it's all them.
See, you thought I was going to be mad.
Why would you do that?
Any other questions? Yes, Kathy?
I may have missed one. I wanted to check. So we're about halfway through the fiscal year. Are we on track for the 20% mandate?
No.
Okay, how off are we?
The fortunate thing with inspections is that we can push that pause button and in order for us to catch up. Whereas, with complaints and applications, you can't do that. They just keep pouring in. So.
To clarify, pause on the routine inspections.
Yeah, pause on routine. Mhm. Because actually on complaint-related inspections, I know right there it shows as of December 31st, we have 14 pending, but as of right, we've done some in January, so we just have a handful left of the complaint-related inspections. But are we on track to hit our 20% for this fiscal year? Unlikely.
And is that because of the prioritization of the inspection? I know that 20% covers everything.
Everything. Mhm.
Or is it lack of staff,
Oh, sorry.
funding, or?
That was actually my doing. I put a pause on the routine inspections because I realized that us spinning our wheels to hit that 20%, if our staff can't keep up with the reports that are coming in, it's not doing anybody any good to keep pumping out these inspections, because if our staff can't get to them for a year to review, by the time we find violations, they might have already done something, the violation's already pretty old, and it makes it harder to enforce later on if we try to take some action. And so what I said was I want to stop routine inspections until we get caught up, because otherwise we're creating more work for ourselves that we can't keep up with.
So anyone watching this webcast right now knows that inspections have been paused.
Temporarily. Kathy?
I understand where you're coming from on that, and I get it. The backlog was pretty extreme in terms of paperwork, but I also think there's a value to the inspections from a public perception, a public safety, just in terms of an individual that knows, a good inspector going into facilities.
Yeah.
And identifying, putting those individuals on notice
Yeah.
of all the requirements. And the one thing I worry about is I think we added to the last, maybe it was last sunset, the need for the 20%. We added staff for that. And are we sort of undoing that by not trying to achieve it? Those are my comments, sorry.
So Cliff, this temporary pause is again temporary because we have to catch up to the backlog. It's not doing anyone a good service to do that, but we are focusing on those who we feel really need to be inspected. Like I said, the probationers, and focus on them first. But again, yes, we've said we're pausing on routine inspections, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get a complaint. And if we get a complaint, we're going to go out there.
Of course.
So inspections, for people to think they're safe because routine inspections, is actually pretty naive, because they're not. It's common to get complaints, and we could go out there at any time still. But as far as the board putting in the 20% mandate rather than an option, thinking that that's going to get us more staff, is true. We were able to put through a budget change proposal to get more staff, we got 3 more staff. But it didn't give us the funds. And so, yes, we got the authority for 3 positions because of that mandate, but we didn't get the funds to fill them. So they're different processes.
You gotta love government work.
Okay, any other questions? I have one question. Thank you very much, Patty. You were talking about trying to move to a cloud-based, I'm assuming, inspection process so that the inspectors can then transmit their inspection sheets to your office. Is that what I'm?
Yes,
Yes.
not just the inspectors, but also the facilities. They will upload compliance documents.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mhm.
And at that point, if we get that capability, will the inspectors then have laptops or iPads or something that they can?
Well, we've already implemented that, so
Okay.
everything is being uploaded to the box,
Okay.
which is what it's known. with
So how
the
close
name.
are you to actually making that a reality as far as?
Providing them with the tools like laptops and iPads, it's.
So I have a question
budget
about
issue.
that. Are they independent contractors? They're not.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So as an independent contractor, there's expectation you could require them to have some sort of electronic device. Isn't that correct?
So this is actually something that we're looking into because I think it's very important for our inspectors to be using state equipment when they're doing their inspections. If they're using their personal devices, it's subject to PRAs and discovery. And so it's definitely something on our radar to get them state-issued documents or state-issued equipment. But again, we are paying very close attention to our fund, so it's something we need to pursue. It's just a matter of when.
Yes, I
But
see.
does that make them not independent contractors if you're
Well,
supplying?
that's what my
the-
question, yeah, they are.
Does
Yeah.
that make them not independent contractors if you're supplying the equipment? I mean, there's several factors that
No,
come
so-
into it, but
So
that's one of them.
there's actually a special contract process that we follow for subject matter experts like inspectors to where it's individualized experience that gets them, so we kind of bypass the normal bidding process.
Okay.
So I know that's been a question that we're looking into because there was a bill that was passed as far as independent contractors go. And so we're looking to see if that impacts us at all. And I don't think it does, but we're still researching it. But they're still held to the contract that we have.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or questions from the public? Okay.
Okay, so the next one is public outreach. There are no materials for this one either. But we do a lot of outreach when it comes to our licensees and to the associations. We reported on what we've done recently with the associations, the Board of Governors meetings, the cannabis outreach that we do. And Patty's team, their inspectors also go out and do quite a bit of presentations to do that outreach. And so I think that we are doing quite a bit of outreach when it comes to our stakeholders who are technically part of the public as well. But I think we need to do more for consumers. And actually, when I was talking to Diana as part of our monthly calls, I had asked if there are any, and this was really for our public members, and if our professional members know, but if there's events that you are doing, if you're holding and if you're having, like, Alana, I think you had mentioned that you do or vaccination clinics and you outreach events. So if there's things that's happening, I'd like us to have a presence there to provide information and just be a tool to let them know that we're here, and if something goes wrong, we're here for you. And so if you guys do have that happening, if you could let us know so we can see if we can get someone there to help have that presence. So, any questions or? No? All right, that's it for the management reports.
Can I I thank you for doing those calls. I know it takes time away from your day and you've got a lot on your schedule, but it's, I think, very helpful for the board in between meetings. And really, thank you very much for taking the time to do them.
You're welcome.
Do you call each member of the board once a month?
So not yet, but that's the goal. I send out the monthly updates to all the members, and then I've requested the members to let me know if we could start doing the monthly calls. So I've started with multiple, but not all yet.
And I'd like the board to know that my monthly call fell on Martin Luther King Day, which was a state holiday. And Jessica called me from her house. And that's dedication.
Okay. Item 22, future agenda items.
I'm sorry, actually, before we get to that, before I forget, we have to go back to the meeting minutes that we did not approve, the November teleconference.
Oh,
Shoot, now I gotta find them.
that's the second official meeting that I missed.
Okay, any comments or any corrections that you'd like to make on those? No? Anyone want to make a motion to approve minutes as is?
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have Dr. Waterhouse approving, I believe Kathy seconded. Okay, any more discussion? Comments from the public? Okay. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Ms. Bowler? Ms. Laredo?
Sure.
Dr. Nunez?
Recuse.
You abstained.
Abstained? All right, abstained.
Thank you. Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Yes.
Ms. Yanis?
Abstain.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries.
Okay, now we'll go ahead and move to future agenda items. Do you have any suggestions, Jessica?
I think we have a lot on our plate right now.
Yeah, right, I know.
I'm not quite sure we want to add more, but I'm happy to if you guys want. And by happy, I mean not, but I'll still do it. But really, I'd like you guys to talk about the location of the next meeting, because I think we're kind of split. Me personally would love to go to Fresno to see the zoo. But we had discussed the MDC meeting, because I'd like to get their feedback as well as far as going to Fresno. I get that we're going to a location that otherwise we wouldn't be going to, and so you have the argument on one side that we're going to the licensed population there to get them to participate, which I hear that. But I also think that we have a lot of public members from the public who come on a regular basis, and they have expressed concerns about the difficulty of getting to Fresno. And given the atmosphere of the board and what we're going through, my concern is we're doing things that they're not too happy with us about. And if we start going to a meeting during this time, that makes it really difficult for them to get to us. I'm concerned about that perception. But there's other members who still really would like to go to Fresno. So I really, this is not my decision. This is a board decision of where you want to have the meeting.
So, comments or?
Why can't we have a meeting in LA?
So you can have a meeting. We have to have, by law, have one meeting in Southern California. But so we will have one this year, whether it's April, it's the next one or a future one in the meeting. But a lot of it goes to the cost of a meeting. And so it is cheaper to have it here versus in LA. But it's in LA it can be more accessible to those who are coming.
And we could do it in one of the smaller cities like Burbank or Pasadena or something that's a little bit cheaper than
Yeah, so I think the question is not why can't we go to LA, because we can and we will. It's more of the desire to go to a location in the Central Valley, in Fresno, or even where Dr. Nolan is in San Luis Obispo. That's the question is, we don't go there. Should we go there? And if so, when?
I think I want to also express or reverbalize what the CVMA representatives were saying yesterday, that they have a large gathering of people for a PAC meeting here in Sacramento the day before. And so I think they're really concerned about their ability to come down and represent the CVMA or be a part of the discussions we have because of that. So I don't know if everyone knew that, but that's one of their concerns about Fresno is they're going to be here all day the day before, and they're hosting a lot of people, and so they're kind of concerned. But having said that, well, I'll let everyone else talk. I like Fresno.
Does it have
but
to be the
it's- yeah.
April meeting that's at another location? Couldn't we do that July or October?
I mean, this is really up to you guys. You guys can have it whenever you want. I just with this timing, I'm not quite sure now is the best time.
Yeah, I think,
I motion to have the next meeting in Sacramento.
okay.
Well, I don't think we need to have a motion. I just wanted to pull the room to see if you,
I decree that we have the next meeting in Sacramento.
With
I do
uniforms.
agree with Jessica. I think that saving as much money as we can is really important, and also being as sensitive to the needs of the people that do end up coming regularly and participating is important as well. But
I'll just say, and I think it's important to be sensitive to the needs, and if there's a huge group of people that we know are going to be here the day before, then, I would vote for it to be in Sacramento for that sake. I'll also just point out that just personally, it's more difficult to fly out to Fresno for me. There's no Burbank flight to Fresno, which is the place that is the easiest for me. So then we have to go to LAX, which really, really blows. Or I also fly out of Orange County, and I haven't even looked if there's an Orange County flight to Fresno. It's
There
just,
is, but-
that's not the greater whole, right? So I will, in future, I will do what is best but personally, it is, that's my thoughts.
at the same time, I do want to acknowledge that Dr. Waterhouse and Dr. Nolan make those trips here, so
Every single time.
totally get it.
yeah, I
Drive up
drive
and they
for 5.5
drive.
hours. Any other comments, or? I do think, was there a reason why, how does Riverside for the next meeting, is Riverside better than Sacramento for some of you? No. I love the hotel there, it's great, but Riverside's
That
bad.
turned out to be expensive, didn't it?
Think-
The one in,
We will not be going back to Mission Inn.
Oh, darn.
I know.
Well, so I would think that the October meeting ought to be in Southern California, is that correct?
Okay, so some people define Fresno as Southern California. Yeah, you divide the state in half.
Southern California people.
You divide the state in half, and Fresno's in the southern half.
I'm certainly willing to look into a free meeting room in San Luis Obispo if that's something that,
I'll second that.
no one would want to do that. I withdraw my.
I think, the costs of Fresno, probably for the meeting itself, and even the hotel room per diem costs were probably fairly good compared to Orange County or maybe the Oakland time we went, or even, I think we were in LA or San Diego. The problem I see, as much as I enjoyed that meeting, is I just think for our stakeholders, it's not an easy, it's centrally kind of located, but you've really got to get there by car almost. And I'm just wondering, that's my concern about it. But I also am very cognizant of the costs, given,
Well, and also cost for the staff to stay overnight.
well, and their travel. Yeah, that I assume would change a lot because you have a lot of staff moving wherever the meeting is.
Oh, question for Jessica. When does our fiscal year end? Is that July?
June 30th.
So if we
It
had,
starts July 1.
if we had the April meeting here, we're saving money, and then we can have a July meeting in a new fiscal year, maybe in a different location?
Well, yeah, but it's not a game about, 1 year to the next. It's a fiscal responsibility in the light of increasing fees across the board.
Well, that cost, yes, but also access, how easy it is for the public to reach us.
Well, but I was responding directly to
Yes,
her
sorry.
comment.
And it's
Just-
April that the CVMA is having some sort of thing here
Correct.
in Sacramento?
Well, also CARBTA, Nancy, when she gave her opinion, also was concerned about the location of Fresno.
Just another pitch for LA, possibly in either July or October. Do you like how? There's, and I appreciate that you all like drive up here. Terms cost-wise, though, there's three of us that are LA-based, so we won't be staying in hotels.
No, and we will be down in LA, this year. At some point, we will be there.
Then given that, I guess I'm just repeating what I said. I think for the April meeting, since we have a huge group, if people have told us that they're already having concerns about trying to go somewhere else, then I think it behooves us to listen. I also don't know who that group is, right, or what they're.
I agree. I think my vote would be to stay in Sacramento in April. Or San Luis.
Okay, then I think we're going to change our website and move the April meeting to Sacramento. But we will look at visiting both LA and Fresno at the future meeting this year.
And what is the date of the April meeting?
23rd and 24th?
Yep.
What are the rules about other board members coming to the sunset review meetings? Is there a problem with that? Can they come?
They can come and be in the audience, but they can't do any kind of discussions about board business amongst each other, because then you have a quorum.
Okay,
It is.
so I just wanted to make sure and invite all of you to the sunset review meeting if you want to join. Are there any other future agenda items any of the board members would like to bring forward? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Okay.
Second.
So we don't have to vote on that.
No, we
but
don't
We
have to
just
do this,
wanted to
but-
make sure and notice that we are now adjourning and going off record.